The sun was shining brightly in the blue sky above the snow-capped mountains. The sun shone brightly in the blue sky above the mountains. The silence was broken by the sound of a hammer hammering a nail into the wall. After finishing, the owner of the hammer, who turned out to be some guy, looked at the result of his work with admiration. Standing in front of the beautiful building he had just finished constructing, he looked around and said that it should have been enough. The next moment tears appeared on his face, but they weren't tears of sadness or sorrow. They were tears of joy because he finally had his own restaurant. This happy crying guy's name was Ellison. He was a 9th grade Archmage, and the main character of this story. However, his story started much earlier, namely 15 years ago, when he was walking home from school as usual. He had always wanted to be a chef and was currently walking home to practice cooking. He went to high school where there was a culinary arts club. His biggest dream was to become a chef after graduation and open a small restaurant. However, his dream was not destined to come true, as it was crushed along with a truck, which was the last thing he saw. But to his surprise, his life was not over. When he woke up, he found before his eyes a landscape of a completely unfamiliar world. Trying to come to his senses, he sat up and wondered what this place was. However, as soon as he looked up, everything became clear. In front of him was nothing but a fantasy world from some novel. However, the place he was in was far from peaceful. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his shoulder and a man's voice called out to him. Frightened, Ellison turned around and saw a man with a backpack behind his back, who told him in a firm voice to pack, because if he didn't, he would die on the road. Not understanding what was going on or what the man was saying, he looked around. As it turned out, many people with backpacks behind their backs were going somewhere. He called out to the man who was leaving and asked him where they were. Thinking that the man was a stranger because of his clothes, he answered that the town was called Grake and was located on the outskirts of the Rurin Empire. Then he looked at the burning city and added that he didn't expect red dragons to appear in such a remote area. As it turned out, the world he had been summoned to had monsters, magic, and an empire that was currently at war with the dragons. This was not the most pleasant news for a man who just wanted to be a cook. However, since he had no choice, all he had to do was what humans were very good at, namely adapting and accepting the current situation as quickly as possible. So to begin with, he decided to think positive, and even if he was hit by a truck, he still had a second chance. Besides, he believed that the world couldn't be as bad as it might seem at first glance. Besides, he didn't have to join the army here, which was great news. Suddenly, the main character's musings were interrupted by the sound of hooves, followed by a man on horseback, who turned to everyone and shouted that they had received a decree from His Majesty. Taking out a scroll, he loudly began to read the decree, which said that the fate of the country was in their hands, since there was no place left to escape from those damned dragons. Despair appeared on the faces of some of the people listening. The man continued reading, saying that now it was their turn to stand up for their country. Hearing this, people raised their hands to support him. Raising his hand, the man shouted loudly, saying that the king was ordering, "Let us fight, in the name of the night." In the middle of the crowd of shouting people who were ready to give their lives for the empire, there was a guy who stood out not only because of his strange clothes, but also because of his eyes, which were filled with despair. On the day he was summoned, the Rurin Empire was in crisis because of the Dragon War, and because of that, the military power provided by the mercenaries was not enough. As a result, the government had to recruit for military service. And regardless of status, all men between the ages of 17 and 45 were drafted into the ranks of the temporary knights. And our protagonist was no exception. And a moment later, before he had time to come to his senses, he stood with a sword in his hands at the entrance to the barracks, where he was now to live for the near future. After a while, they began drills, one of which taught them to shout loudly in the name of His Majesty the Emperor. While shouting loudly along with everyone else, he tearfully reflected to himself that it would have been years better to die by the truckload by now. That was how his service as a knight began. One day, one of the commanders suddenly approached him and showed him a piece of paper, informing the surprised protagonist that his magical potential was quite high. Because of this, when he leaves the training center, he will be enrolled in the Magic Corps. After a while, after receiving his portion of food, which didn't look very edible, especially for someone who wanted to become a chef, Ellison reflected that being an Archmage was better than fighting with a sword. As he tasted the food, he immediately grimaced in disgust, telling himself that he had never tasted anything worse. But the guys sitting next to him didn't think so, as they tasted the food and said that it was not bad. Their words struck the protagonist very much, because he could not believe that there was something worse than this, suggesting that the people of this world may simply have no taste. But seeing them devour such unpalatable food, it struck him. After all, if he opened a restaurant with delicious food here, it would surely be a success. And from that very moment, he decided for himself that no matter what, he would not miss his second chance and realize his dream. Even if it requires undergoing grueling training, or fighting the dragons that were just another obstacle to his dream. The war went on, and all the while, it was his dream that gave him strength, and the hope that he would be able to leave after 3 years of service. However, if he had known then that the war would last not far from 3 years, but 15, he wouldn't have been sure he'd have been able to keep fighting. Let's finish with the sad and return to the present time, in which there were no more wars, and there was peace. Walking by Ellison's restaurant, some woman looked at him and was surprised, because she couldn't remember seeing this store here before. But what surprised her even more was some guy standing outside the store crying. Seeing his tears, which kept flowing in streams, the woman concluded that he had probably gone through a really hard time. Approaching him, she asked if he was okay, to which our protagonist turned around and replied that he was, adding that he was just happy that he was finally able to open his own restaurant. Hearing this, she asked him if he was the owner of the restaurant, to which Ellison replied that he was. When she extended her hand, she said with a smile that her name was Rain. Shaking her hand, he replied that she could call him L. She added that he must have moved here recently, as she had not seen him here before. Rain replied that she was quite right. Rain also asked if he lived alone, to which he replied that he did not, adding that he lived with a friend he met at the service, who slept a lot, so he wouldn't wake up until the evening. At the same time, in one of the rooms, someone was sleeping sweetly on the bed. Turning to the main character, the woman said with a smile that since he was opening a restaurant, he probably needed a place where he could buy meat. He replied that he did, and he was just about to find out if there was a butcher store in town. When she heard that, she happily replied that her husband had a butcher shop, and then explained how he could find it. This was a great suggestion to Elle, and he replied that he would go there right away. Before he went, Rain warned him, saying that her husband had a bit of a tough temper, adding that if he was too tough, he could just tell her that she had sent him there. Elle thanked her and said he would, thinking to himself that she was a good person. He also thought about what kind of husband she was, if he had a wife like that. But as soon as he arrived at the butcher shop, he was met by a bearded man who looked at him with an annoyed and intimidating look and asked him why he had come here. Elle immediately turned pale from such pressure and lost all confidence. He trembled with fear, avoiding the man's intimidating gaze. Stammering said that he was the owner of the restaurant and wanted to order some meat from him, to which he immediately thumped his fist loudly on the table and replied that he did not sell. Then, when the protagonist asked him why, he said that he didn't sell, and that was the end of it. In a furious voice, he said that he had seen many people like him who bought meat from him at a cheap price and then sold it for twice as much. Elle continued to listen in silence to the irritated words of the man who continued to accuse him, thinking that he must have had a hard time if he was so angry. This probably would have gone on for a long time, but the next moment the man was stopped by a blow to his head, accompanied by a question about what he was carrying. Holding the frying pan in her hands, Rain said in a fierce voice that she had come because she knew this was what would happen. Then with a sigh, she apologized to Elle for the inconvenience, then asked what kind of meat he wanted. The man immediately began to resent her, talking about how hard it was for him to cut the meat. But the woman irritatedly told him to shut up, asking why he was blaming the guy for all of this. At the same time, the protagonist was watching from the sidelines and wanted to go home more than ever. After subduing her husband, Rain sent him to get some meat. She apologized again, adding that her husband had a bitter experience with betrayal when he was still a mercenary, which made him like that. Elle replied that it was fine, then asked if her husband was a mercenary. She answered that he was, then added that when she thought about it, he didn't seem very old. Then she asked him if he had been drafted. He replied that he had been through a lot of bad things in the last 15 years. When the man returned, he put a bag on the table with a clatter and then irritatedly shouted that it was the guy's meat. Upon opening the bag and seeing the contents, the protagonist awkwardly asked if it was the meat he had been promised. The man laughed evilly and replied that he thought he would give him the precious Bellerin meat, adding that he would only supply it to restaurants that he approved of. At the same time behind him, his wife took the form of a demon, exuding a murderous aura. The unsuspecting man, seconds before his death, told the protagonist that he should make a delicious meal out of this meat, adding that if he didn't satisfy him, he wouldn't see a single bite from then on. Mr. Knoll proudly announces his sophisticated taste for exquisite and delicious cuisine and warns Elle to brace himself for what is to come. Lost in his thoughts, Elle becomes the target of Mr. Knoll's mockery, with him suggesting that Elle might be getting scared of him already. The mockery continues until Mr. Knoll is unexpectedly knocked out cold by his wife, Rain, with the frying pan. She reassures Elle by describing her husband as a tough guy and the hit from the pan won't injure him at all. She advises him to ignore the mocking words, assuring him that Mr. Knoll was simply joking and he doesn't have to do as he says. However, Elle brushes off the mockery, expressing his willingness to cook for Rain and Mr. Knoll. Surprising Rain, Elle accepts Mr. Knoll's challenge and invites both of them to join him for dinner at his restaurant in the evening. He promises to create a delicious meal that would surpass any skepticism. Despite Rain's skepticism, Elle remains confident and pledges to whip up something mouthwatering. Rain decides to test Elle's culinary skills by offering him some Bellerin meat, but Elle declines, insisting that the meat he gets is enough. Confidently, Elle pledges to create something delightful, but Rain warns him that the meat in the sack is just ordinary wuba belly fat, which is the local term for pigs in this world. Livestock has different names in this world, with cows called wuka, chickens called palenkyu, wolves called Bellerin, and pigs known as wuba. Back at his restaurant, recognizing the quality of the pork belly, Elle understands why Mr. Knoll took pride in such top-notch meat. Despite the locals considering palenku a luxury ingredient, Elle feels they didn't truly appreciate the allure of the meat in front of him. Seeing the pork belly, Elle decides that grilling is the best way to savor it. With a flick of his hand, he conjures a ball of flame, starting a fire for the grill. Meanwhile, as Rain and Mr. Knoll are heading toward the restaurant, the couple engages in a heated discussion about the events at the butcher shop. Rain questions her husband about the need for approval when selling meat to a restaurant, wondering when he adopted such a fancy principle. She expresses her belief that Elle seems like an honest and kind newcomer who deserves to be treated nicely. Mr. Knoll defends himself, stating that Rain has only met Elle that morning, and she couldn't possibly know Elle's true personality so soon. Rain, slightly irritated, counters Mr. Knoll's perspective, suggesting that rather than being deceived with both eyes open, he should consider that other people's eyes are more accurate. She sees through Mr. Knoll's excuse of checking Elle's skills and points out that he is merely testing Elle's sense of responsibility. Her words made Mr. Knoll silent, realizing she had a point. Attempting to save his pride, he claims to have a discerning palate, questioning Rain about what would happen if Elle's cooking skills fell short of expectations. In a flashback, we see a humanoid monster with razor-sharp teeth giving out a deafening scream. A knight struck hard by a massive club falls to the ground. Another knight, realizing the overwhelming numbers, orders for a retreat. In the chaos, a soldier trapped under rubble cries out for help. A menacing monster raises its club, targeting the helpless soldier who continues pleading for assistance. Then, Elle steps forward, invoking the magical skill thermal blade. Light radiates from his hand, cutting through the monsters with blade-like precision. Even the rubble was reduced to pieces, providing an opening for the trapped soldier to be rescued. The knights, astonished by Elle's sudden intervention, greeted him with a mix of relief and respect, hailing him as a powerful mage, a great Archmage, cheering at his arrival and calling him Sir Ellison. In the present, Elle employs the same magical skill, Thermal Blade, not for battling monsters, but for an ordinary yet vital task. He casually uses it to slice the meat, ensuring the marinade seeps deep into every fiber as it is cooked. The surface moisture evaporates, promising a crispy texture for whoever savors it. Wiping his hands, Elle declared the meat ready. The doorbell chimes. The door creaks open, and Rain and Mr. Knoll are welcomed by Elle. They are asked to take a seat as he prepares to serve the dish. In a matter of moments, Rain admires the tavern, noting its cleanliness and orderliness. She praises the place, finding it appealing. But her husband remains unimpressed, dismissing it as merely clean and nothing more. Undeterred by Knoll's grumpiness, Rain pulls out her frying pan and requests him to be patient, assuring him that the food will be served soon, despite his stupid agreement. With slight nervousness, Elle is waiting in the kitchen. Mindful of the pork belly's natural fat, he lightly coats the griller with oil to ensure the meat won't stick. Placing it upside down, he muses that with more time, he could have prepared an even better dish. As the pork begins to sizzle, the delightful sound enhances the anticipation of the meal. Carefully frying the skin and adjusting the heat for even grilling, Elle adds a sprinkle of salt to enhance the flavors. He grills the meat thoroughly, cutting it into convenient serving sizes. Next, he prepares a vegetable salad, hesitating slightly as he considers the locals' unfamiliarity with the flavors. Despite this, he continues, incorporating various vegetables and a tangy dressing to complement the richness of the grilled pork belly. All decide to keep it simple, suspecting Knoll's meticulous taste might not appreciate unnecessary additions. Nicely plated, the salad and grilled pork belly are ready. Elle serves the food, and Rain is pleasantly surprised by its appetizing appearance. However, Knoll grumbles, dismissing it as mere appearance and nothing more. Rain, with her fork, samples a bite of the grilled pork belly. As the flavors unfolded in her mouth, she couldn't help but compare it to a taste of heaven. Surprised, she turns to Elle, questioning if it was genuinely wuba meat. Elle confidently affirms that it is indeed. Rain shares her experience, describing the grilled pork belly as delightfully crispy on the outside and bursting with juiciness within. The refreshing aroma of the salad complements and balances the dish, a combination she never anticipated. Expressing her love for the food, Rain's praise brought a smile to Elle's face. Pleased with the meal, Rain promises to supply meat for Elle in the future so she can enjoy his cooking again. Elle thanks her and shifts his attention to Noel, inquiring about his meal. To Elle's surprise, only a few pieces of vegetables remain on Noel's plate. Rain, with an assertive tone, declares that the meat is gone. Elle, stuttering nervously, asked if Noel was satisfied. The response is a resounding no, accompanied by a table slam. Noel demands more meat loudly and insistently, but before he can escalate, a frying pan meets his head once again. Rain scolds him, advising that if he wants more meat, he should ask politely. Clearing his throat, Noel, somewhat conceited, states that Elle has passed his test. Among all the Wuba dishes he had tasted, Elle's was the best. The contract is sealed, granting Elle access to the finest meat from the Laverne Empire for his shop. Elle chuckles with satisfaction, and Rain is glad that her husband has finally acknowledged Elle's culinary skills. The deal is sealed with a handshake, and Elle secures a reliable source of meat, ensuring a stable supply for his business. Noel, satisfied with the meal, orders another serving, marking what Elle considers a successful first day of business. Upstairs in a bedroom on the second floor, a black-haired girl stirs awake. The enticing aroma of delicious food flowing up from downstairs has roused her from sleep. It's evening in Great City. The suburb embraces a tranquil atmosphere. Elle, the owner of a recently opened restaurant, has smoothly settled into the rhythm of his new culinary venture. A week has passed since the restaurant's inauguration, and the warm reception from the customers fuels Elle's satisfaction. As the evening progresses, a polite customer places an order for 2 additional servings of the Wuba pork belly. With a cheerful smile, Elle happily fulfills the request. The plates are swiftly cleared and the leaving customers express their gratitude, praising Elle's culinary skills. A content smile crosses Elle's face as he bids them farewell, inviting them to return. With the day winding down, Elle, while wiping his hands clean, wonders if he should close up the shop. He notices that his condiments and spices, vital ingredients for flavorful dishes, are about to finish. Elle understands the significance of these elements in cooking, and a tinge of concern crosses his mind as he realizes pepper and other spices are running low as well. Yet, in this world, such spices and condiments are rare commodities not to be used freely. The quality and variety of these culinary essentials in his new world pale in comparison to the modern world he once knew. Restocking becomes a necessity for Elle, and he carefully picks up a gold coin, placing it at the center of a magical circle as he utters some magical words. Energy and light radiate from the magic circle, putting up a mysterious spectacle in the quiet corner of Great City. Tackling all his problems at once, Elle stumbles upon the magic of summoning from another world. This magical trick can fetch items from the world he originally came from, like the special spices and condiments he needs for his cooking. The summoning magic, when completed, would make these things appear out of thin air. Elle discovers the summoning magic quite by accident while trying to figure out a way to return to his world. Wiping his forehead after using the summoning magic, he points out that this magic has its rules, with limits on the size and quantity of things he can summon. Despite its limitations, the magic is a big help, but it couldn't take him back to his world. Elle feels guilty about taking things, even though he exchanges them for a gold coin. A quirk of the magic was that groceries, unless processed, would arrive spoiled. The summoning left Elle feeling weak, and he struggled to get used to that sensation. Even as an Archmage, he could only pull off this summoning trick once a day. While tidying up, Elle decides it is the perfect time to take a break, drinking a beer he summoned last time. However, when he opens his fridge, all he finds is an empty box, surprising him. Wondering where his beer went, he couldn't hold back his anger. His voice echoes up to the second floor, calling for Rurin, who is peacefully asleep with empty beer cans around her. She chuckles in her sleep, seemingly tickled by Elle in her dreams. A sudden cry pierces the tranquility as Rurin, rubbing her head, accuses Elle of hitting her for no reason. Holding an empty beer can with an annoyed expression, Elle counters her claim, explaining that she had consumed all the beer without asking and that he simply wants her to clean up after herself. Rurin retorts, asserting that Elle deserves it for not leaving her any food from the last time. Proudly declaring her dragon lineage, she claims that cleaning is beneath her, a task meant for lower beings. Elle's frustration reaches new heights, and he delivers another not-so-gentle tap to Rurin's head. He then instructs her to peel and organize the onions. Rurin, still teary-eyed from the earlier bump, insists on being a dragon and cries while tackling the onion-peeling task. As Elle observes Rurin, he reflects on her true nature as a dragon currently polymorphed into a human form. He had found her during the aftermath of the Dragon War when she became an orphan, losing her mother and home. Unable to leave her alone, Elle had extended a helping hand to Rurin, and they had been companions ever since. Despite Rurin's age of over a century, she remains a young dragon, perhaps explaining her occasional immaturity. Now, with tears streaming down her face from the onions, Elle sighs. He promises Rurin a delicious hamburger steak for dinner if she finishes peeling and puts an end to her complaints. Rurin's eyes sparkle with anticipation as she eagerly holds Elle to his promise. From the door swinging open, Elle's attention shifts from the kitchen to the entrance where Mr. Knoll walks in. Setting aside his kitchen duties, Elle greets him, who settles comfortably into his seat and promptly orders some alcohol and snacks. Relieved to see it was just Mr. Knoll, Elle assures him he'd whip up his order shortly. Realizing they are out of beer, Elle decides to offer a different kind of alcohol, which is soju. Grateful for a bottle he had summoned last time, he contemplates whether to change its container. Soon, a plate adorned with meat pieces and a bottle of alcohol finds its way to Knoll's table. Expecting a beer, Knoll is taken aback as he questions Elle about the liquid in the bottle, wondering if it is water. Elle assures him it isn't and encourages him to take a curious sip, introducing the alcohol as soju. Elle watches as Knoll, with a hint of skepticism, pours a cup and takes a sip. As Knoll savors the flavors while using a fork to nibble on the meat, Elle observes with satisfaction. To Elle's delight, Knoll enjoys the unconventional drink and snack pairing. Knoll describes the soju as initially bitter but ending with a sweet note that complements the meat perfectly. The side dish, now elevated with soju, possesses a unique charm, distinct from a salad he had eaten last time. Impressed, Knoll acknowledges Elle's extraordinary cooking skills and expresses his admiration by requesting another bottle of alcohol. Elle gladly complies with Knoll's request for another round, but amidst the pleasant exchange, he can't help but notice a subtle change in his behavior. A thought crosses Elle's mind. Has something happened to Knoll? As time slips away at the table filled with empty alcohol bottles, Knoll signals for another round. Concern etches across Elle's face. He warns Knoll about excessive drinking, emphasizing the high alcohol content of the beverage. Ignoring the caution, Knoll, with a red face, insists on another bottle, expressing the desire to drown his sorrows in alcohol. Worried, Elle presses Knoll for an explanation of what has happened to result in such a drinking spree. Knoll, with a gloomy tone, utters his wife's name, Rain. He harbors suspicion that Rain might be unfaithful. Taken aback, Elle listens intently as Knoll begins recounting the unsettling events. Rain would frequently dress up and leave, claiming it was for a short while. This has become a recurring pattern, and troubled by suspicion, Knoll decided to follow her one day. His body trembling with anxiety as Knoll continued his narrative, his fist colliding with the table, revealing the heart-wrenching truth. Rain, it seemed, was meeting a man from her past, a comrade from her mercenary days. This man, once a close friend of Knoll, had vanished when Knoll opened his butcher shop. Now, it appears he was probably hanging out with Rain, perhaps too ashamed to face Knoll. The distressing revelation deepens as Knoll discloses that Rain had gone out again, even outside the usual monthly patterns. With a shaking fist, Knoll grapples with the belief that his wife no longer cares for him. Elle, absorbing the weight of Knoll's pain, could only listen as the tale of heartbreak unfolded. Elle extends a comforting hand to Knoll, urging him to take a moment and gather his emotions. Elle emphasizes that drowning sorrows in alcohol wouldn't solve the underlying problems. In a rushed response, Knoll admits his struggle to face reality without the numbing effects of alcohol. He chuckles ironically, confessing that despite the heartache, he still loves Rain deeply. The weight of the situation brought Knoll to tears. He bites his trembling lips, unable to face life without Rain. In desperation, Knoll turned to Elle for guidance. With a steadying tone, Elle suggests leaving the matter in his hands. Puzzled, Knoll questions Elle, acknowledging that he hadn't known Rain for long. Elle offers reassurance, sharing his belief that Rain might not be the type to cheat, asking Knoll for patience. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Rurin continues peeling onions, tears streaming down her cheeks. In frustration, she mumbles that Elle is an idiot. Dressed in his mage outfit, Elle enters the kitchen and calls for Rurin to stop the onion peeling. Curious, Rurin inquires why, and Elle mentions that there is a task at hand. Despite initial reluctance, Rurin agrees to accompany him. As the night takes on a festive air, the town bustles with activity. Elle and Rurin find themselves on a rooftop, observing a lively restaurant. Rurin innocently remarks on the crowded scene in other restaurants, unknowingly hurting Elle's feelings. He points out the general vicinity where Rain might be. Scanning the restaurants, Elle spots Rain accompanied by a man, and a realization strikes him. This might be the colleague Knoll mentioned earlier. Elle, with a suspicious gaze, calls Rurin over and discreetly points towards Rain and the man busy in conversation at a corner table. He entrusts Rurin with a peculiar task, to eavesdrop on their exchange. Rurin, always willing to strike a deal, negotiates with Elle. In return for her cooperation, he promises her a serving of his delicious hamburger steak and vows not to demand any additional ingredients for his culinary ventures. Elle, a man of his word, guarantees 2 hamburgers if she agrees. Rurin, nodding in compliance, sealed the agreement. As Rurin turns her attention to the unfolding conversation between Rain and the man named Mint, she overhears Rain's inquiry about whether they should disclose their association to her husband, Mr. Noel. The mention of Noel reveals an underlying concern. He seems troubled and suspicious due to Mint not visiting the butcher shop. Mint, in response, offers a perspective on Noel's personality. He suggests that if Noel discovers that he had helped the shop with money after Noel got scammed before, it would be Noel avoiding him, not the other way around. Elle, absorbing the snippets of conversation, couldn't help but contemplate the dynamics at play. Turning to Rurin, he seeks confirmation of the authenticity of what she has heard. Reassured by Rurin, Elle finds himself deep in thought, realizing that the unfolding narrative isn't merely a love affair, but a tale of intricate connections and unspoken bonds. Elle gracefully descends from the rooftop, signaling the end of Rurin's eavesdropping mission. With a confident air, he announces that there's no need to listen any longer. Rurin, left in the aftermath of Elle's departure, seeks guidance on her next steps. Elle, in response, suggests that she simply head home for the time being. Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, Rain engages in a conversation with Mint, expressing her frustration at the unfairness of her husband's misconceptions. In strides, Elle casually enters the scene and asks if he can join their discussion. Without hesitation, he aligns himself with Rain's sentiments, agreeing that Noel has gravely misunderstood their connection. Noel, in a drunken state still fixated on thoughts of his wife, witnesses the door swinging open at Elle's restaurant as Rain and Mint enter. An uncomfortable tension hangs in the air as Mint, slightly hesitant, greets Noel after a prolonged absence. Anger courses through Noel as he observes the seemingly close pair before him. Rain attempts to defend their relationship, insisting that they are victims of misunderstanding, but Noel remains unconvinced. In his frustration, Noel questions why, out of all people, it had to be Mint, someone he had trusted. In a fit of rage, Noel leaps towards Mint, his clenched fist ready to deliver a punch, accompanied by a furious cry calling Mint a bastard. The collision is halted by an unexpected magical shield that materializes, creating a protective barrier between Noel's fist and Ment's face. The wind stirs as the shield repels the force of the punch. Mint, bewildered by the sudden intervention, finds himself spared from Noel's wrath. Rain, too, is puzzled, but recognizes the shield as a product of magic. The unexpected turn of events leaves the trio in a momentary standstill. Elle quietly approaches from behind, calling out to Mint. He urges Mint to settle the misunderstanding rather than resorting to physical confrontation. With a basket filled with meat and vegetables, Elle asserts that violence won't solve the problem. He reveals that if Noel knew that it was Mint who provided the money for him to start his butcher shop, the situation might be diffused. Noel, caught off guard by the unfolding revelations, turns to Elle seeking an explanation. Elle, adopting a peacemaker stance, invites them to sit down and talk as he begins to prepare some food. Reflecting that a heartfelt conversation might be the key to resolving their issues, Elle arranges all the ingredients with care. Contemplating the healing power of a warm meal and considering Noel's day-long drinking spree, he decides on preparing shabu shabu, a comforting dish. Drawing from Rain's gift of Bellerin meat, he skillfully cooks up a variety of sauces, infusing them with the flavors of soy sauce, carefully strained anchovies, and a touch of MSG. In a brief span, the shabu shabu is ready, and Elle wipes his hands clean, hopeful that the conflict outside has stopped. As they gather around the table, Noel confronts Rain, struggling to grasp the reality that Mint was the benefactor behind his butcher shop venture. Rain, taking a deep breath, confirms the truth. She explains that after Noel fell victim to a scam and was left penniless, Mint came to their aid, offering the financial support needed to open the shop. The revelation hangs in the air, urging the trio to navigate through the complexities of gratitude, misunderstanding, and the bonds that tie them together. In the quiet rhythm of their butcher shop's newfound success, Rain diligently met with Mint every month, slowly repaying the debt that had jump-started Noel's business. The revelation hits Noel like a sudden storm. He couldn't face the truth as he fired back, questioning if the money came from the Lord's castle, repaying him for the scam. He turns to his wife, grappling with the possibility that everything is a lie. Mint, grappling with the weight of his actions, poses a question to Noel if he would have accepted the money if he knew it came from Mint. An apology followed, explaining that he couldn't be present on the shop's opening day, fearing it would seem like deception. Mint, oblivious to Noel's struggles, never imagined the depth of his friend's difficulties. Noel, in turn, had assumed Mint was saving up money for a peaceful retirement as a mercenary. The conversation hangs in the air as Elle, the mediator, arrives with a spread of food. Apologizing, he offered his advice, emphasizing that the vegetables shouldn't be boiled for too long or they might get overcooked, encouraging them to enjoy the meal while conversing. As Elle served, Mint, puzzled by the thinness of the meat, inquired about it. Elle clarifies that the Bellerin meat from Noel's shop is sliced thin for the dish, a soup where the meat is cooked directly in the broth. Amidst El's culinary guidance, Ment gets a serving of the soup. Pleased with the flavors, he laughs and urges Noel to try. Hesitant, Noel takes a sip only to be pleasantly surprised by the taste. Ment stirs up some old memories, asking Noel if he recalls the Perun battle. The recollection brings forward a vivid image of Noel sacrificing himself, taking a sword for Ment. The battle had lingered longer than expected, leaving them with a shortage of supplies and a watery soup as their sustenance. Ment recounts the day he managed to catch a wild Bellerin, only to collapse near Noel upon entering their tent. The soup crafted from the Bellerin was plain, the meat tough and pungent, yet, at that moment, it surpassed any other option they had. As Ment revisits these memories, he paints a picture of a shared past marked by sacrifice and sustenance. Noel, visibly moved, trembles as he responds to Ment. Ment echoes Noel's earlier question, reflecting on why he helped despite saving up for retirement. His revelation was simple. He had no grand plans. Helping his friend takes priority. Tears stream down Noel's face, hands shaking as he holds the soup bowl, apologizing with a stutter. El, witnessing this emotional exchange, expresses his satisfaction with the resolution. Ment, taking a sip of the soup, finds it heartwarming. In that shared bowl of soup, unspoken emotions are exchanged, and the wounds of misunderstanding begin to heal. In the background, Rurin interjects with a passionate outburst, pointing out to El the absolute nature of a promise to a dragon and criticizing him for not keeping his promise. El found himself in a perplexing situation, scratching his head. With a reassuring tone, he suggests that there is still time to whip up some hamburger steak for Rurin right away. However, Rurin, her patience wearing thin, points out that it was already late into the night. She questions how El could dismiss her request when all she wanted was for him to fulfill his part of the contract. Amidst this exchange, Ment comes to meet El in the kitchen. Swiftly, El covers Rurin's mouth to stop her protests and casually informs Ment that he hopes they enjoyed the food. In response, Ment acknowledges the delightful meal, but directs to the reason for his visit. Ment discloses that his mercenary group has received a mission to escort someone important, and they wish to organize a dinner before embarking on their journey. He seeks El's agreement to host this celebratory gathering at his restaurant. Caught off guard by the unexpected request, El's surprise is evident. Contemplating the prospect of a group dinner for mercenaries, he weighs the unusual request. Palenku is a unique bird in this world, and is distinct from regular chickens due to its frequent changes in habitat, making it a rare and highly valued meat. El is frustrated by the difficulty of catching Palenku and considers burning the forest to obtain the prized meat for the mercenaries' dinner. When he asks Noel about Palenku meat, he is surprised, as acquiring it would be like finding a gold mine. Disappointed that Noel doesn't have any, El questions Noel's lost confidence, and Noel, feeling a pang of guilt, recalls hearing about Palenku sighting in the lemon forest. Driven by this lead, El heads to the lemon forest, but finds catching a Palenku to be a difficult task due to fatigue. Eventually, he gives up and delegates the task to Rurin, who agrees after securing a promise from El to wash the dishes. Rurin releases a powerful black aura to scare and then uses a dragon roar to strike a Palenku unconscious, earning El's gratitude. El humorously compares his fate to that of the Palenku, having already consumed a dragon's heart. He tasks Rurin with catching 15 more Palenku. Returning from their hunt, they find satisfaction in their successful expedition. Rurin, though irritable, enjoys a beer after work, making El caution against excessive drinking. As night falls, the restaurant fills with mercenaries who initially doubt the place's capacity. However, Ment confidently assures them of the exceptional taste. A sudden declaration from a young mercenary named Miltine catches everyone's attention as he claims to believe in the quality of the food. Miltine, confident in his recommendation, vouches for the restaurant based on Ment's endorsement. However, his colleagues were skeptical, knowing Miltine tended to praise everything Ment said. Miltine, annoyed by their doubt, laughs it off. Ment intervenes, urging them to stop chatting as the food is arriving. Shortly after, El appears with the dishes, and Ment apologizes for the noise. Understanding it was a celebration, El welcomes them. Ment introduces Miltine, who expresses high expectations due to Ment's praises. El hopes the dish will live up to the expectations and serves them the dish. Miltine is shocked to learn it is Palenku, a beast even professional hunters struggled to catch. El, confused by Miltane's reaction, invites them to taste it. Amazed by the extraordinary flavor, they praise El's cooking and declare the restaurant the best. Miltane, enjoying the dish, is warned not to eat it all. El, happy with their response, promises to bring dishes to other tables, but faces a challenge due to the high number of customers. He reluctantly asks Rurin for help. Rurin, initially reluctant, faces El's frustration for her attitude. In an uncharacteristic tone, El mentions their plan to open a restaurant together after the war, recalling their initial agreement. Feeling a change in the atmosphere, El suggests Rurin return to her lair. Confused, Rurin agrees to help, changing her mind. With Rurin's assistance, Elle's workload lightens, ensuring a smoother operation. After completing the tasks, a tired Rurin receives praise from Elle, who invites her to join him for a meal and beer. While enjoying the palanku meat, Rurin compliments Elle's delicious cooking. Elle, surprised and pleased, notices that the restaurant is looking clean. When all the customers left, Rurin cleaned up the whole restaurant. Elle asks if Rurin has become a bit more mature. Rurin attributes it to the place being their restaurant, leaning her head on Elle's shoulder with a smile. Amid the peaceful atmosphere, Elle seizes the moment to take out the topic of forgetting their bet of cleaning the dishes for a month while capturing the elusive palanku. However, Rurin disagrees. Suddenly, Rurin's behavior changes as she notices a mysterious figure outside the restaurant, making her alert. Surprised by Rurin's sudden shift, Elle soon understands when he sees the person entering, the Black Dragon Elder, Metadonna. Metadonna expresses displeasure at visiting the human city, remarking that it always feels unpleasant. Elle recognizes the imposing dragon and inquires about his purpose for being there. Metadonna, not immediately answering, shares that Elle has been living quite comfortably with a dragon in this small place. Turning his attention to Rurin, he asks if she feels uncomfortable. Rurin assures that she didn't, leading Elle to ask if she was the reason for Metadonna's visit. Knowing that no one opposes him about Rurin unless there is an argument, Metadonna confirms that Rurin is indeed the reason for his visit. However, Rurin asserts that she had chosen to stay with Elle even after he abandoned her. Metadonna expresses concern about Rurin's attitude, clarifying that he didn't abandon her, he simply arrived late. Elle interrupts, emphasizing the importance of the promise made. Dragons highly valued promises, and Metadonna acknowledges this, stating that he came to discuss the promise they made regarding Rurin. They had promised to entrust Rurin to him, but there is a hierarchy in the promise. The one who makes the promise holds priority. Elle inquires about the nature of this first promise. In the Black Dragon clan, dragons are considered adults upon reaching the age of 800. However, a dragon without its lair by that age becomes a ward and has to leave for the sacred lands. Rurin had been utilizing her mother's lair, which was unfortunately destroyed in the last war. As per the clan rule, when Rurin turns 800 next year, she must leave for the sacred lands. Breaking this rule is considered an act of war, but Elle remains unfazed. He confidently declares that he will carry out what he mentioned earlier, shocking Metadonna, who looks visibly angered. Elle, however, isn't intimidated, even though Rurin is feeling anxious. Rurin anxiously intervenes, preventing Elle from potentially starting a war. Despite her concerns, Elle seemed confused, as his intention was not to initiate a conflict. Instead, he clarifies that he meant to build a dragon lair. Metadonna, still puzzled, shows his anger at Elle's attitude. Although Elle had consumed a dragon's heart, he shouldn't be underestimating other dragons. Rurin stops Elle from escalating the situation, but Elle's true intention is revealed. Since they have 1 year before Rurin has to leave, Elle proposes building a dragon's lair within that time frame. He suggests that with enough time and resources, they can accumulate treasures and begin the construction. Metadonna couldn't comprehend the sudden shift, thinking the problem had already been resolved. He leaves, stating he will return next year. Elle invites him, and the construction of the dragon's lair begins. A dragon's lair, essentially a luxurious cave filled with treasures, symbolizes a dragon's residence. Though customers kept coming to the restaurant due to rumors about serving palanku, Elle faced challenges due to the high number of customers. In a different scene, Noel is surprised in a forest, encountering several palanku perching on a tree. Elle explains his plan to supply palanku to Noel and become the exclusive butcher shop selling palanku meat in the empire, attracting numerous customers. Noel, astonished, inquires about catching them, to which Elle assures him not to worry, as Ment's mercenary group had already tasted some. Elle offers the palanku meat for free, intending to split the proceeds equally. Noel is surprised, questioning why Elle did the work of catching the palanku and why he would take only 50%. Elle casually dismisses Noel's concerns about taking only half of the sales, stating it isn't much profit anyway, and Noel could use the opportunity to sell other meats and buy his wife nice clothes. Although annoyed, Noel agrees to sell the palanku meat to Elle. However, Noel remains puzzled about how Elle managed to catch palanku, given their constant movement. His confusion turns into shock when he witnesses Elle casting a spell, erecting a giant barrier that covers the entire forest. Elle marvels at Elle's magical prowess, realizing it surpasses the abilities of someone who had only studied magic for a few years. Curious about Elle's true identity, Noel questions him, but Elle only claims to be a restaurant owner who retired from the army after the war, urging Noel to keep his magic usage a secret. Elle assures Noel that his plan will run smoothly the next day, with the barrier in place. The following day, looking at his empty restaurant, Elle laughs happily, relieved that no customers came. Rurin, however, questions if this is truly something to be happy about. Elle acknowledges the truth, admitting he hoped for at least 1 or 2 customers, but the lack of customers provided them with time to build Rurin's lair. Rurin asks if Elle will stay with her once the lair is finished, but Elle declines, planning to stay at the restaurant. Upset, Rurin suggests declaring war against the Black Dragon clan, but Elle calms her, assuring they would build her lair nearby. Despite her uncertainty, Elle urges Rurin not to worry and follow him. Elle's destination was the hill below his restaurant, as all the land there belonged to him. Rurin was content with the proximity of her lair, but notes the need for stabilizing barriers during construction to avoid damaging the restaurant. Elle asks Rurin to start digging, but he eventually decides to return to the restaurant, not willing to leave it empty for too long. Rurin is left speechless by Elle's decision to return to the restaurant, while Elle is shown enjoying the freedom of being alone in the sunshine after a long time. However, his solitude is short-lived when a young boy suddenly enters the restaurant. The young boy inquires if it is a famous restaurant, and Elle, while greeting him, downplays the fame, confirming that it is indeed a restaurant. The young boy has heard about the legendary palanku being served here, but Elle apologizes, explaining that they no longer sell it and suggests he visit Noel's butcher shop. Unwilling to do so, the young boy asks if there is anything else to eat. Elle, willing to accommodate any customer, invites him to sit and wait. Elle observes that the young boy seems like a noble boy, facing difficult circumstances. Although the restaurant didn't discriminate against customers, the only dish tailored to children's tastes is hamburgers, made with woka meat as a patty. Elle would mash the meat, add a little salt, bake it with bread, place the patty on top of vegetables, pour the exquisite sauce with onions, and finally add eggs obtained from hunting palankas. Despite not selling palanku, Elle has a different approach to the eggs, creating a hamburger fit even for a dragon. Serving the dish to the young boy, Elle explains that it was similar to a sandwich. The young boy, about to taste it, is interrupted by someone who appears to be his servant, accompanied by guards. The young boy's face turns pale as the servant reveals that they have been searching for him everywhere. Panicking, the servant questions why the young boy is in such a place. Annoyed by the servant's interference, Elle expresses his frustration, but the servant, now realizing Elle's ownership of the restaurant, inquires if Elle knows the identity of the person he just served. The young boy is the heir to the great city baron. Ignorant of this fact, Elle questions the problem, emphasizing that regardless of status, he serves food to all customers. The servant expresses annoyance at Elle's presumptuous attitude, while the boy is trying to defuse the situation and does his best to break up the dispute. Recognizing the tense atmosphere, the boy, also known as Diaren, decides to leave with his servant, ensuring to pay for his meal and apologizing for having Elle prepare the food without him eating it. Observing Diaren walking listlessly out of the restaurant, Elle grows more worried. After a while, Rurin arrives and informs Elle that they should take turns digging the hole since she admits she isn't strong enough and her hands hurt from digging alone. Elle, in his usual blunt manner, told her to stop whining and promised to dig the next day, as they had somewhere to go. Curious, Rurin asks where they are heading, expressing her hunger. Elle explains that they were going to the Lord's castle. Inside the castle, Diaren is seen lost in his thoughts, and he is surprised when a blue portal suddenly appears behind him, revealing Elle and Rurin carrying the ordered hamburger. Diaren, shocked by their sudden arrival and Elle's use of magic, is handed the parcel containing the warmed-up hamburger. Elle tells him to taste it, and Diaren eagerly prepares to do so. Although he has many questions, he decides to eat first. However, someone interrupts by knocking on the door of Diaren's room. Concerned, Diaren assures the person outside that everything is okay, but Elle is frustrated by the thought that they didn't even let Diaren enjoy his hamburger. In the next scene, we see that now Diaren is scared that what will happen now. Elle commands that he is the Lord's heir and baron, and they cannot refuse his orders, so be confident and say it was nothing. Diaren replies that they have never listened before and always ignored what he says. The knocking on the door gets more intense as we hear that Butler wants to come in. Rurin thinks how frustrating this is, and she screams it was nothing, so leave, and Diaren never ordered to come in. Everyone goes silent, even he person behind the door. Diaren realizes that she screamed in his voice instead of her own and thinks that they still won't listen to his orders. Person behind the door replies that he understands his orders and asks Diaren to call him if he needs anything. Diaren is put to shock when he hears what Butler said, and Rurin is angered that how pathetic this was. Ellison explains that he is a very superior person and he just have to establish his superiority himself, when suddenly Diaren kneels down to Ellison as he wants to make Ellison to be his teacher. Diaren is put to a confusion. Diaren explained that his mother passed away after giving birth to him and his father remarried shortly after, so he spent most of his time with his stepmother. His stepmother was a strict person and she told him to be careful of how he acts since he was a lord's son. Despite all of that, he still loved her and there were some good times as well. However, everything changed when his father became bedridden due to an illness and his stepmother never looked at him or talked directly to him at dinners or celebrations. Diaren further explains that he wanted to become a good lord, just like his father, but the servants tried to restrict his movements under his stepmother's orders. There was no one to talk to him, and everyone was ignoring him all the time. Since when it became like this, he thought he wouldn't be treated any better even if he inherited the title of a lord. Dairon's eyes light up as his thoughts are changed after today's events, and wants Ellison to teach him more ways to become a good lord. El is put to confusion as he states that he is just a restaurant owner, and Diran's this conclusion is a bit weird. Dairon explains that this has happened never before and that person would have entered if he had told him to leave. It is obvious that Diran lacks a lot of confidence, and it seems like he purposely suppressed his energetic and active personality. He tries to make him confident by explaining things like to look into the other's eyes when talking, and also explains that if he wants to be a good lord, the lord's position comes with taking responsibilities, and he should be able to take the responsibility of every word he says. El further explains that he doesn't mean that he should ignore other people's word and teaches him that he should listen to them and make sure to think about them before making a decision he truly believes in. If the decision is his favor, then all is well. If not, then accept it and take the responsibilities. In El's opinion, that's what makes a good lord. Diran is just confused and shocked that being a good lord is a big responsibility. Anyways, it's about time that they leave. So, Elsion asks Dairon to eat the food before it gets cold and wants Dairon to visit him in restaurant soon. Dairon states that he is feeling dreamy and takes a bit of his burger. It seems that the burger is very tasty and delicious. When suddenly he realizes that a good lord means a person who makes an effort to ensure that everyone can enjoy this type of food. And of course, better food is quals to better life. Finally, he understands the actual meaning of being a good lord. The scene changes to El and Rurin coming out of the portal in front of restaurant, where Ellison is hoping that Rurin doesn't take Dairon's words too seriously. To which Rurin asks why did he put so much effort into explaining him, and it seems like he cares a lot. Ellison, extending his arm with gold coin, explains that he did this as he got payment more than what the burger costed, and further explains that this coin is valued at around 100,000 runes. Rurin is a bit confused and knows that a regular hamburger costs 200 runes, so she asks if Dairon really gave him the coin in exchange of the burger. It turns out El did all this so it can fulfill the price because it's not a rip-off restaurant. Dairon has hands as big as a dragon, and Ellison hopes that he becomes a regular later on, but Rurin, opposing Ellison, expresses that she doesn't like this because she will have fewer hamburgers to eat. The scene changes to a forest located on the outskirts of Grake City where there is an oddly popular clinic. The doctor there is definitely skilled and even learned healing magic, but that isn't the reason for its popularity. The biggest reason why customers flock to this place far from downtown is that it is run by an elf named Elena. We see Mrs. Rain having a severe burn, and that gets completely healed in a blink of the eye with the help of magic. Elena expresses that she is glad that Rain arrived quickly, as if the burn was left untreated scars may have formed, and the burn should be fine now. Rain thanks Elena and expresses that her skills are the best. But Rain notices that Elena is not looking so good, and asks if there is any problem, to which Elena replies that she has been thinking of going back to her hometown now. Mrs. Rain asks that why does she wants to leave. Elena expresses that she loves healing and helping people, so despite everyone's opposition, she came out. But the reality was different. People come to her not for treatment but want to meet the elf woman at all costs, rather than doctor, as her. As she expresses this, we see people peeking through the window. She further explains that not too long ago, a lady came to her and was furious, saying that she had seduced her husband. Elena was put to shock as she didn't ever do this. Elena further explains that she knows that not all humans are like that, and it's not that she doesn't like healing people, but it is getting difficult to her to hold it in and keep going. Rain asks that if she doesn't like her too, but Elena likes her. Rather, Rain has always treated her well, and that's why she put up with this without prejudice. Rains wants to confirm that if there were more things that Elena liked here, that she would still stay. But instead of replying, Elena is confused what to say. Rain explains that there is so many things she doesn't like about her husband either. For example, his snoring also, he is so naive, but there is something she likes more, like the fact he is dependable, looks out only for her, and does his best in everything he does. Rain also asks that if she said that it still feels good to treat people with Elena, replying yes. She recommends the restaurant that is located at the side of the hill and wants Elena to try eating there tonight. But Elena is not sure why Rain will recommend a restaurant. Rain tries to explain that the number of reasons for this place can keep increasing one by one. Scene changes to Creston with his nephew coming up to Ellison. Creston is not sure what El is doing here as he was going to the restaurant. El says he was also about to go to the restaurant as he was constructing the lair for too long and asks who is this person. Creston explains that he was his nephew, and he said that he had something to discuss. So Creston wanted to listen while eating some wooba meat and asks if there is anyone at the restaurant right now. El replies that Rurin should be there and asks what the matter is. Creston explains that there is a clinic run by an elf, and Rain has recommended Elle's restaurant to the doctor there, and Creston thinks that they should be there by now. Now Elle is hurried, and heads back to the restaurant with the boys. In the way Ellison expresses that an elf is unique, and states that elves don't come out of the forest and asks that they must be popular. To which, Creston in an annoyed manner replies that he heard that all the guys in the neighborhood run there even for a thorn pricking their finger, which is very pathetic. He further explains that seeing things like this makes him understand why elves hate humans. Ellison is not too sure about this statement as he thinks that there are some elves who aren't like that, and Creston shouldn't be prejudiced, and says that he admits that elves are a proud race. As he enters, he sees Elena on the ground kneeling down, saying that Rurin is a great being, and wants forgiveness for her rudeness. Rurin asks if Elena knows she was rude and will forgive her if she lives the rest of her life as her subordinate. Ellison is very angered with this treatment of his guests. Rurin, when she notices the presence of Ellison, says that she got herself an elf subordinate that she can use. Ellison screams in anger what she is doing to their customer as Creston and his nephew wait outside. We see Rurin lying down on the table when she notices a customer is here. Elena asks if this was the restaurant ran by Ellison. Rurin replies, yes, but Ellison isn't here right now, and realizes that Elena is an elf when Elena takes her cap off. As expectations to Rurin, all elves are beautiful, and Elena is one of them too. Elena, in a reply to the compliment, says that Rurin is beautiful too, and she looks younger than Elena herself. Rurin, with a big smile on her face, asks if Elena is saying that she looks younger to her, and explains that she might look young by the standards of her race, but she is not younger than Elena while letting her dragon aura come out of her body. Rurin is now in an angry form and screams that who Elena is talking to like that. Elena is put to a shock as she kneels down and says, sorry. This is when suddenly Ellison and others come in. Ellison see the customer down on her knees in front of Rurin, which makes Ellison very mad. We hear a loud bang from inside, and Rurin crying in pain. We see the door has opened, and Ellison invites Creston and his nephew inside as he asks for forgiveness, because there was a bit of commotion. In the next scene, we see a wound on Rurin's head, obviously made by Ellison hitting her, that made her cry. Elena realizes that Rurin is definitely a dragon, and if she was dreaming, this is because it's common knowledge known to everyone from children to the elderly to never go against a dragon. Dragons are a walking natural disaster, the strongest race, the pinnacle of life capable of annihilating a village on a whim. Elena grown up hearing countless legends about such dragons. Elena wonders who Ellison actually is as he treats a dragon like a child. We see Ellison scolding Rurin and commands her to dig out the cave. Elena is brought back to real world with Ellison coming up to her and apologizing about what happened. Ellison explains that he didn't expect such an incident to happen while he was away. But Elena is still a bit scared and asks if Ellison is a human or not. Ellison replies that he is a human and not a monster. It seems that Rurin didn't even try to hide her presence as a dragon. Ellison goes near to Elena's ear and explains that yes, Rurin is a dragon, and asks Elena if she can keep this a secret from others. Elena is still scared from the incident and replies that she can keep it a secret as she has no intention of interfering with a dragon, and explains that she doesn't want to die yet. Ellison thinks that his first impression is bad as Elena thinks that he will kill her. Ellison asks who elf council member recommended by Rain was, and it turns out to be Elena, as we know. Hearing this makes Ellison think that his first impression is ruined even more. Elena confirms that with the ingredients here, Ellison can make delicious dishes. Ellison takes the order, which was anything without meat, as Elena clearly stated that she cannot digest meat in her body, and it was not about the belief. Also, Creston and his nephew in back order grilled uba belly fat. Ellison decides to make tomato pasta for Elena. Firstly, he fries diced onions, garlic, and mushrooms in a pan with olive oil. The mixture of these elements creates a delicious smell. Then he grinds the main ingredient, tomatoes, and strains them and pours them into the pan. At this time, he seasons with salt and sugar, adds various spices, and then simmer the tomato sauce on low heat to prevent it from burning. While evaporating the moisture from sauce, he prepares the pasta by boiling it for 8 minutes and saves the pasta water for later. Finally, he mixes the pasta and sauce, adds the pasta water to adjust the thickness of the sauce, and finally the tomato pasta is complete. He serves the dish to Elena, who is surprised to see such a delicious-looking dish. Ellison instructs Elena to eat it with a fork and also states that there are no meat products. Elena is surprised by the beautiful color of pasta, and she eats the food. In the next scene, we see that uba belly fat is ready and is served to the customers. Ellison asks Creston for how long he was waiting too, which Creston explains that he thought his neck would break while he was waiting. He asks Nellon, Creston's nephew, to try it as he seems sad, when suddenly Ellison notices Elena eating pasta while screaming that it is very delicious. She also screams that she has been eating raw vegetables only until now, while she was all in tears. After completing, she again screams that it was very tasty and amazing. But she notices that Elle was standing right there, and she is now ashamed of herself. Elle asks that if the pasta was liking to her taste. But Elena was still shamed, and was saying that she couldn't help herself doing that as her face turns red. Elle states that it's good if the dish suits her taste and hands her a handkerchief while doing so. He asks if she usually visit other restaurants or not. Elena explains that in the city she attracts too much attention, so she usually goes to small markets on the outskirts and buy ingredients to eat. It's not like that she never thought of eating proper meals at restaurants, but there weren't many options without meat, and when there were, they tasted bland. She has been wondering if cooking food was even necessary. Elle confirms this statement as he knows that people here don't use much seasoning, and it's quite rare for a restaurant to serve food other than meat, and which is well seasoned and cooked like everyone do here for meat. She explains that coming here changed her perceptions and should thank Rain for suggesting this place. Elle is relieved as he thought his restaurant was going to receive bad rating because of what Rurin did to Elena. We hear a scream from behind when we see Creston standing up in shock. Neelan explains that he found out that her mother isn't her biological mother. The scene changes to a mine where we see an old lady searching for Nellen. She asks a person named Dylan that if he had any uba, to which he replies that he haven't seen them, and the night shift crew has already entered the mine. We see the cheering a bit and wonders if they even ate before working. Old lady asks if she can deliver the basket in her hand and come back, and she goes inside the mine. We are taken back to the restaurant where we see Creston asking where did they hear that story. Nellen, while crying, says that is not what's important and states that he was deceived for 20 whole years and explains that he couldn't focus on work and he even left the mine midway. It seems like Elle and Elena are eavesdropping on others' conversation, while they are also talking to each other that this is bad to do, but they are still doing it. Nellen explains that at this rate he doesn't think he can even go home. Creston opposes his claims and reminds Nellen how hard May raised him. He reminds that his father died early as a mercenary, and despite the hardship she worked day and night to feed Nellen well. He explains that doing all this for a child who is not even her biological child, and asks he is dumb enough to not be able to judge that himself, to which Nellen makes sure that he knows he was wrong. He explains that he was confused and left in a rush this morning. His mother reminds that he was leaving behind his lunchbox, to which Nellen in anger replies that he doesn't need it. Ma'am. Creston is very angered by this and lifts him up in the air by his collar, and reminds him that there are things he should and shouldn't say while calling him a brat. Everyone was scared and confused that what was happening. We see Creston ask what Rain meant by the mine collapsed and what happened to Mrs. May. It seems like Rain is not sure, but apparently Mrs. May went inside to find Nellen, and then the mine collapsed. Nellen becomes sad as sweat rolls down his face. He starts running to get to mine as fast as possible. As Creston was also about to leave when Elena asks if she can also come. She explains that she is a doctor, and if a mine collapsed, then there would definitely be people who are injured. Ellison also states that he will also come. Ryan is not too sure with Elena's decision, but she remembers what she said earlier at her clinic. Ellison volunteers to take Elena to the mines. The scene changes, and we see the people trying to rescue the crowd inside when we see Nellen forcing the guards at the door to get out of his way, but guards refuse as they remind him of the dangerous mine that can collapse again. Ellison tries to calm Nellen down, and he ensures him that they will save Mrs. May. A guard refuses the idea of them going inside and explains they can't predict when the mine will collapse again, as it was an emergency situation. Elle explains that Elena is a doctor who has been taught healing magic, and there are probably a lot of people inside who can't move and need to be treated right away. Guards finally agree to let them go inside, and he begs to save the crowd stuck inside. We now see that they both have entered the mine, and Elena thanks Ellison for helping, but she didn't want Ellison to follow her inside the mine as it was too dangerous. As soon as they enter the first floor of the mine, some rocks fall on them. Elena tries to cover herself to minimize the damage, but Ellison just creates a shield to protect both of them. Elena is very amazed and wonders if Ellison was a mage, and Ellison replies that he was quite successful when he was younger, but is retired now. He also states that he is very curious why Elena decided to come here. Ellison states that he has heard that Elena owns a clinic in Drake City, and explains that he is telling this as one of his comrades used to be an elf too, and he doesn't think she is running that clinic just because she is an elf, and reminds that there were probably some times when humans behaved rudely to her, and yet she decided to enter a collapsing mine to save people and asks if here is a special reason to do so. Elena doesn't reply and quietly walks when they find that the road ahead is forked, which means it is divided into two. Ellison, knowing that they don't have enough time to search both of them, speaks out some spells, and 4 yellow orbs-like thing generate out of thin air. Elena is very shocked that he can do magic and even control spirit. Ellison explains that these spirit orbs will tell him if there are any survivors. In one of the tunnels, a spirit orb finds a miner who hurt his leg while the mine collapsed, and he thinks that he is hallucinating as he saw the orbs and also thinks that his end is near. But Elena and Ellison managed to make it in time, and Elena quickly started to help the miner. Fortunately, that injury is not a serious one, and she explains to the miner that he can heat out after a first aid treatment. Miner is very grateful to Elena. This was when Ellison told her that spirit orbs more people and they should get going. Elena was finishing the first aid up when more bunch of rocks fall on them, but fortunately Ellison was right there and saved them. Outside the mines, we see injured people flying out as they are treated and sent to safety with the help of Elle's magical powers. Inside, we see that Elena is now very tired. Elle asks if she can keep going, to which, fortunately, she replies yes, and they can keep going. They finally find Nellen's mother, and Elena, without hesitation, starts trying to treat her. Elena explains that Mrs. May is in very bad state and she will have to use stronger recovery spell on her, but she can't guarantee its results. She uses a big spell that spits out green flash and the scene is changed. We are taken to the temporary evacuation shelter, where we see Mrs. Rain sad and questioning that what did they do to receive these times, but Creston tries to calm her down and reminds her that the spell worked and it's not worry too much. We see that Mrs. May is badly injured around her eye and all her clothes are covered in dust. With tears in his eyes, Nellen is constantly waiting when she will wake up. Elle explains that there is no need to worry, and Elena treated her quickly using stronger spells so she's past a critical state. Elena further explains that she may have received a heavy blow to her head, but the treatment was a success and the injury near her eye isn't a serious one, and she will be able to live normally once the bandages are removed. Nellen opens that lid of the basket that was found in May's hands. It turns out that it is the lunch that he rudely refused in the morning. He regrets doing this. Suddenly Mrs. May wakes, and if the person standing near her was Nellen, everyone's mood quickly changes as Mrs. May is finally awake and conscious. Nellen bursts into tears as he approaches his mother and tells that her son is right there. Mrs. May, before her injuries, asks if Nellen was hurt while in tears. Nellen replies that he is fine, and he was so scared. What if the rude words he said in the morning became his last words to her? May is happy that her son called her mom again, as she also starts crying, and she apologizes for making Nellen worry, and states that it is a relief that Nellen was not inside the mines. Elena, after watching this scene, explains that actually she wanted to close the clinic and return to her hometown. She was disappointed in humans after experiencing a lot of terrible things here. That's when Mrs. Rain told her to try to increase the numbers of things she enjoys here. Perhaps it seems that she didn't try to find those things. She realizes that the lives of humans are much shorter compared to an elf's, but they express their emotions freely, and that is why people get easily disappointed and heartbroken. And she was one of them. But ironically, that was also the reason she started her clinic. She thinks that there are too many things she cherishes here that she can't just leave. She likes the honest emotions of humans, and now she also knows how delicious the food here is. While saying that she realized many things today, she started to feel dizzy and was about to fall when Elle caught her and saved her. Elena's face became red when Elle caught her in his hands. Elle says that it seems she exhausted herself and excuses as he uses a spell on her. Elena realizes that it is the elf's mana transfer spell. Ellison says that the elf friend he mentioned of earlier taught him this spell, and his name is Bendon. Elena, when realizes that Bendon is the hero of elves, she is just shocked. When leaving the mine, Elena asks Elle how does he knows the mana transfer spell, but Elle reminds that he already told that he used to be a famous mage. Meanwhile, on the hill beneath the restaurant, Rurin is still digging the tunnel, thinking about Elle, the scoundrel that always leaves her out. Rurin is annoyed by Elle and thinks how can he tell her to dig just because she can't use magic in front of other people, and that is not fair. She was just trying to get a subordinate to help with the restaurant when suddenly a stream of water bursts onto Rurin, drenching her in water. Rurin wonders what this was. Elle confirms that suddenly water came out of the ground, and Rurin wondered where it was coming from and dug and ended up getting water all over the place. Rurin replies positive and replies that is how she got water all over the place. Elle calms himself down and tries to be patient as he knows she doesn't mean to irritate him. Rurin says that she tried digging again and couldn't find it. Elle explains that there must be an underground water source nearby, and digging opened up a waterway. It seems that she dug pretty deeps, but even they use magic. Seeing it from here would be impossible. Elle asks Rurin if she remembers the last time when they talked about, and they need to cover the ceiling with a shield, to which Rurin again replies positive. After asking this, Elle uses some 8th class magic spell called Inferno to seal the ceiling. While he was using the spell, Rurin reminds him that he will have to control his power, if not he will fly off the hill. Elle creates a massive shield, but the water starts bursting inside the shield. He questions himself that Inferno hit the groundwater and is pushing up. He confirms that this definitely is hot spring water. Rurin, in an excited manner, asks Elle to do this again as she needs to clean herself up a bit while taking her clothes off. He tries to stop her from entering the hot water, but it was too late and she entered it already and burned herself. We see that they put a kettle on the stove while they figure this case. Elle reminds Rurin that she can't just oon into things like that, but she tries to defend herself by saying that how was she supposed to know it was hot? He apologizes that he should have told her and create another shield around the stream of water. Rurin wonders what he was doing with the shield and asks him. Elle explains that he wants to create a safe place where he can collect the clean water. He further explains that by pressing down on the ground with the shield, the dirt will naturally settle and create a space to collect clean water, and then he will remove the top of the shield. While explaining, he made a hot water bath in minutes. He throws Rurin saying, "Get in." Rurin, without realizing, starts screaming that the water is hot and she was going to get cooked, but she realizes that it was just a little bit warm. While taking clothes off, Elle explains that he cooled it down to not burn their bodies. Now Elle too enters the pool filled with warm water. He exclaims that the water feels good. Rurin asks Elle where did he go. Elle explains that the mine has collapsed and he went to save the people there. Rurin in anger asks with that female elf and becomes mad on him. Elle tries to calm her down and explains that she was needed as he is not good with healing magic. Rurin, still in anger, says that is the reason he was so happy. Rurin exclaims that she had to dig these holes while he was at the mines and says that that part of her hates elves and other races too. Elle again tries to calm her down by saying that he hates everyone but her. Anyways, he grabs the hot water in the kettle and pours it in a cup. He adds cocoa powder and mixes it all up. He asks Rurin if she would like to have some. Rurin grabs it and asks what this was. Elle replies that this was cocoa, that he brought some along with the towels. Rurin tries it and realizes that it's sweet but delicious. Elle explains that cocoa is made by processing a fruit called cacao, and it looks simple powder, but it takes a lot of growing, fermenting, drying, roasting, pressing, and much more to make this. A lot of people worked hard so they could taste some of it. Elle expresses that he has the power to blow a mine, but even then, he couldn't save a single injured person. He can't even get simple ingredients for the restaurant with Creston. Even if he uses magic to create a large space here, he will eventually have to ask the dwarves to build a lair. While taking a sip of his cocoa, he explains that there may be difference in races, abilities, and personalities, but they shouldn't try to push everyone away because of that. Even a dragon can't take on the world alone. Rurin says that she understands and will treat him differently from the rest, as he is special to her. Elle tries to explain that that's now how it works, but gives up and tells her to take it slow. The scene changes to a time period of war when we see a person commanding someone to hold the position and don't get too close to the cliff's end. It seems that he was commanding young Ellison how to fight. He again commands him to back up as he was too far out while slashing a person who was attacking Elle. Suddenly, a person comes attacking from behind with a large weapon from behind that old man. He manages to stab him with his sword and tries to throw him off the cliff, but it doesn't quite work that way, as evil person take him as well in the cliff. Ellison saw his senior die before his eyes. The scene changes, and we see Elle putting together 2 wooden planks with nails and hammer. Elle closed the restaurant for today. Rurin asks why he closed up the store. Elle explains that they were drinking cocoa the other day, but they had no milk as he used it to marinate meat, and there only so little left over. Because of this, he is going to build a ranch so he can have a constant supply. Rurin gets confused as there is nothing. Elle says that they have to start from scratch. He explains that what they need is called Baraneric, and it's located downstream of Varent River. Elle asks Rurin to teleport to the Barent River, but Rurin can't technically do that as she can only teleport to the places she have been to, and she was able to track Baron Kid because she was tracking the scent that child left behind. Elle tells her to go by feeling, and he will tell her the direction and distance. Rurin exclaims that that is not how you use this skill, and still opens a portal to the point where Elle told. They arrived at the right place, and there are so many Baranerics there, but they seem to forget one thing, that they were high up in the sky, because it seems that the ground is lower here to the ground compared to ground at the restaurant. Rurin asks Elle to do something, but Elle points out that she is a dragon and questions that how can she be afraid of the sky and what happened to her wings. She exclaims that she would rather die falling than releasing her polymorph. While using some spells, Elle asks why does she hates her dragon form so much, but Rurin doesn't want to tell him the reason. They slowly make a perfect landing. Rurin realizes that the river is really wide, but Elle points that this was, and not a river. But Rurin, quickly taking her words back, says that she knew that. Elle knows that she always been like this and leaves the topic behind. Elle gives an idea that how about playing in the ocean after catching some Baranerics. Rurin's mind diverts as she liked the idea of playing in the ocean after catching Baranerics. Rurin asks that how much do they have to catch, which is about 10 Baranerics. Rurin also makes a bet that slower one has to do the dishes. Elle quickly taunts her that don't regret it afterwards, besides that there are not many dishes to do since the restaurant was closed. At the restaurant, it seems that Creston, Elena, and Diren are waiting outside the restaurant, and they all look very weak, as they had no food. Creston points that he has been waiting since the lunchtime. Diren also tells that he made up his mind to come out of the castle to find that it is closed. Elena questions that if he knows this place, and also tells that she hasn't eaten anything since breakfast for her pasta at this restaurant. Diron explains that the owner of the restaurant that is Ellison is his teacher, and he came again because the food he tried last time was so delicious. But it seems like he is not here. Another portal opens, and after catching Baron Eric's and playing in the ocean, they are finally back at the hill next to the restaurant. Rurin says she can still taste the salt from the ocean water in her mouth. Elle asks if this was fun, to which Rurin replies that yes, this was fun. Also, Elle didn't know that Baron Eric's would ready to accept control and it would be so easy to catch them. Rurin explains that this was all thanks to Dragon's mind manipulation magic. Elle thanks Rurin and thinks this temporary fence should be enough for the cattle and he will just have to build a place for them to sleep, but he will make that later and proceeds to open the restaurant finally. He notices that Creston and Diron are waiting sadly outside the door of the restaurant for their respective food, but it seems that Elena was knocked out on the ground while waiting for the food. Creston realizes that Elle is finally back. Elle is shocked that they were waiting here for so long. Scene changes, and we see that all three of them now have their respective foods, and they exclaim that they finally feel alive again. Ellison asks what would they have done if he didn't come back today. Creston replies that there would have been 3 graves next to the restaurant because of death by starvation. It turns that Rurin is washing all the dishes, and I suppose that she was the slower one to catch the Baron Eric's. Creston asks where they have been all this time, to which he says that they were gone to catch some cattle, and Elle explains that he wants some milk produce. Creston supposes that he was the person building behind the restaurant and asks that how is he going to keep them, as he points out that he will need more hands when it gets busy in the restaurant. Elle obviously thought about this and expresses that he wants to hire some new people in his restaurant since someone needs to keep a constant eye on the meadow, and he will have to organize some job interviews as he can't just hire anybody walking out there. Creston, his excitement, says that Elle won't have need to worry about that, and explains that he heard the elves can find out what a person's intentions are, and the young master aka Diran will have to learn to find trustworthy people. Elena and Diran both express that what Creston is saying is true. Creston further says that he met all kinds of people while working as a mercenary and they should give him something in return for making Elle work on his holiday. Elle is just confused in what Creston is saying. Creston tries to explain further that he wants to do the job interviews for Elle and Rurin in exchange for Elle making food for them on his holiday along with Elena and Diran. Now both Elena and Diran is confused at what this man is talking about. We see a poster somewhere in the city saying that Elle's restaurant is hiring people for the meadow. The job interviews for the meadow starts as we see a very long line of people standing in front of the restaurant in the hopes of getting hired. Rurin asks if the job interview is a part of the process of getting useful subordinates. Elle tries to explain that is very similar. Creston asks the first person to come inside of the restaurant, but Creston already fails him and explains that a young guy without any energy can't handle some creatures like Baron Eric's. He calls for the next candidate. Next person comes and introduces himself as Burnt, applying as a manager for the meadow. He explains that he will do the utmost best no matter the task they assign him to. Creston saw the good impression Burnt gave, but Elena doesn't think that. She fails Burnt and explains that he is full of vulgar thoughts. Creston is very angry and says that they can't have that in the restaurant. Burnt tries to explain that all he did was think that she was really pretty. They both call the next one and tell Burnt to leave. The next person comes in and highlights that he has been managing meadows for past 30 years, and he will make this Greek city's best meadow. Diran comes in contact this time and asks his thoughts on the welfare of Baron Eric's. Candidate gets confused as Diran pulls out a scroll with a bunch of things written on it and asks him if he has any plan regarding nights and holidays, and also asks if he has clear rules like punishment when it comes to crimes involving Baron Eric's or not. He also asks his thoughts about the incentives related to the production of milk, and it is given that he already has plans to prepare for future competitions. He also explains that he is curious as to how E will deal with illness and injuries of the cattle. Diran further explains that this place is not just any pasture and says that he is a baron that cares about the cattle as if they were civilians, and he shouldn't take this lightly. Candidate thinks they all a bunch of crazy people, and he leaves. This move makes Diran very mad as he asks where he was going, abandoning the civilians. Both Rurin and Elle are left confused, and she exclaims that she didn't knew getting a subordinate was such a difficult thing. They call next applicant and fire him immediately because Creston remembers that this was the guy who wanted to start a fight in his butcher shop a while ago. They few applicants goes by and we see the reasons of denying them, that they either looks at Elena with weird eyes or couldn't reply to the questions of Diran. Next person enters and was about to speak something, but Creston already fails him with the reason that his gaze was too weak. Elena tells he was staring at her also. He couldn't give proper answers to Diran's questions. Elle is just crying in the back as they fail all the people in the quay and he couldn't get anybody to work for him. There is a funny moment though where Creston fails an applicant as he says he feels like failing him and fails everybody next in the QA. He realizes that there are no more candidates left, and he thinks that the reason is because the salary on the recruitment announcement was 2 or something. But we and Elle know the reason behind is the recruitment judges themselves. Elle is very angry and sad at same while Rurin tries to calm him down. Elle asks Creston to stop the interviews and explains he will do the next interviews alone, and is very thankful for what they did in favor of him. When suddenly someone excuses and wants to give the interview, everyone became quiet. It seems like Creston knows this person named Miltine. Miltine explains that she came here after seeing the announcement poster and asks if she can work there. Elle and Mr. Knoll are surprised to see Miltine at Elle's ranch. Mr. Knoll asks her why he was there instead of being with Ment on a mission. Ment and his mercenary troops were assigned to guard a caravan of merchants. Miltine replies something terrible has happened while they were on the mission. Some bandits had attacked them in the way, and Ment fell off of a cliff while fighting the bandits. Both Elle and Mr. Knoll are shocked to hear the news. Knoll inquires about Ment's current condition, fearing the worst. But to everyone's relief, Ment has recovered from his injuries, but sadly, he is unable to use his leg anymore. After the incident, Ment decided to retire from the mercenary, and Miltine followed him by leaving the mercenary too. Elle tells Elena that since Ment has already recovered, she won't be able to help much in the healing process. But still, Elena insists she has to meet him in person first to confirm. Meanwhile, Rurin points out that if Ment is hurt, then why does Miltine want to work with them after leaving the mercenary instead of Ment? Elle shouts at her for being inconsiderate, but we see that Miltine is starting to turn red on the other side. She tells everyone that when Ment got hurt, she had no purpose to continue in the mercenary. She wants to be with him all the time. She wants to work with him on a ranch together. Everyone is shocked by her revelation. She's clearly in love with Ment, and everyone can see it on her face. Knoll curiously asks about her age. She replies that she'll be turning 29 this year. So there's a 13-year age gap between her and Ment. Elle thinks it's probably okay to have such a big age gap and asks Elena if it's the same among elves too. Elena replies that it's not that simple, and it's a bit different in the case of elves. Miltine then adds that if she doesn't get to work on the ranch, she'll rather die starving in the streets. Rurin is impressed by her determination and accepts her offer. Elle is happy to have her and Ment work on their ranch too, but still, he asks Miltine if she has consulted with Ment yet. Miltine replies that she hasn't told Ment about it yet, as she is planning to tell him when she gets the first milk from the ranch on her own. Ment had taught her everything from fighting and bookkeeping in the mercenary. This time she wanted to be the one teaching about working on a ranch. Thus, she wants to work alone first. Everyone is impressed by her passion, and Elena remarks that the passion for love is indeed something else. Hearing Miltine's resolution, Elle also gets an idea of the perfect dish to prepare for Ment using milk from the ranch. The next day, Miltine joins Elle to work on the ranch. Miltine calls Elle manager and asks what she should be doing on her first day. Elle is surprised to be called manager, but he assigns her with the task of taking the cattle, the Baronerics, out of their fence to graze. Miltine heads over to the cattle fence. Initially, she thinks it won't be that hard taking the cattle out to graze, but it turns out that the simple process needs a lot of effort too. Even though the cattle are quite calm, they refuse to move an inch even after Miltine's repeated attempts to move them out. Then she is given the task to change the hooves of the cattle, as unlike wild Baronerics, domestic ones require hoof maintenance too. She fails in completing this task too, as the cattle simply kicked her away every time she tried changing their hooves. The next day she is given the task to dry out the hay for later use. But the cattle came running towards the hay to feast on them. Thus, Miltine fails this task too. After a few more days of hard work and failures, Miltine falls to the ground and is feeling disheartened. She was so confident before joining the ranch, but after working there for a few days, she feels that she is terrible at work. Just when she feels like giving up, the cattle approach her and give attention to her. They seem to have grown a liking to Miltine, and to reward her for her affection, they gave her a jar full of milk. Miltine rushes inside with the milk and calls out to Elle. He is surprised to see the milk, as he thinks that it would take her at least a week to fetch it. He tells Miltine to clean up and join him in the kitchen. When she asks Elle what they are preparing, he tells her that it's a special dish for Ment, a pizza with lots of cheese. Elle starts the preparations by pasteurizing the milk with heat carefully for 30 minutes. Then he adds some vinegar to curdle the milk. Rennet would have been better, but since they don't have it, they'll have to proceed with vinegar. After the milk coagulates, he cuts the curd and separates it from the whey to clump all together again. He directs Miltine to stretch and fold the curd mixed in brine and hot water to remove the trapped air bubbles to finally make some mozzarella cheese. Miltine wonders if it looks different from the cheese she has seen so far. Elle confirms that it looks different from the cheese found in their world. Elle teases Miltine by stating that one needs a special gift to confess. Since Ment loves food, a special dish will be a good gift to confess. Miltine is flustered hearing the word confession. She wasn't planning to confess anytime soon. Elle tells Miltine that even though he doesn't look the part, He used to be very popular among ladies. Everyone used to line up for him. Milteen is surprised by the revelation and wonders if Elle has had a lot of dating experience. But sadly, he doesn't. He tells her that the ladies simply left after lining up for him. But Elle shares that he knows in the case of love, sincerity always gets through, and that's what Milteen should put into the dish, ferment. Milteen is clueless, but still, she tries to put her sincerity into making the pizza. In the evening, Elle visits Ment's home with Noel and Elena. Ment is surprised to see them as he hasn't told them about his condition himself. Noel asks furiously why he hasn't told him about his accident, and Elle asks him how his rehabilitation is going. In the distance, we can see Milteen standing with the pizza they prepared earlier in hand. Elle asks Ment how he has been recovering now. Ment is embarrassed by their sudden visit as he wasn't looking forward to a celebration that night. Elle introduces Elena to Ment and tells him that she runs a clinic. Ment recognizes her instantly as the famous one. He questions them about how they knew about his injury since only the people from his mercenary group were supposed to know. Elle replies that it was someone from his group who told them about him, and Milteen enters the house with the pizza in hand. She asks Ment how he is feeling now. Elena proceeds to check Ment's injured leg, and after some healing, she asks Ment if he is feeling any better. Ment replies that he can move more comfortably now. Elena tells him that the healing process will take some time, but it will help in his recovery. Ment then turns his attention to Milteen. He asks her what she is planning to tell him. Milteen tries to muster up the courage to express her true feelings, but the moment of truth seems too nerve-wracking for her. She takes the help of the pizza to further delay her confession. She takes out the food in front of everybody and tells Ment she has prepared the dish for him with the help of Elle. When Ment opens the pizza box, we see that the toppings on the pizza are carefully placed in the shape of a heart. Everyone is surprised to see the pizza as they have never seen anything like that before. Milteen asks Ment if he finds the design pretty, indicating the heart-shaped design. But before she could finish, Ment takes out a slice to have a bite, thus breaking the shape and almost breaking Milteen's heart. Ment is surprised by the taste. Elle asks if the cheese is stretching well or not. Ment is even more surprised to learn that it's made of cheese. So far, he had assumed that cheese was nothing but spoiled milk sold in a corner of the market. He didn't know it could taste so good. He describes the taste of the pizza as savory, salty, and chewy, and calls it delicious. After Ment, others take their slices too, and love the taste. Milteen, while having a slice, is wondering if her mission to convey feelings through food is about to fail. After finishing the food, Ment praised Milteen, expressing surprise at her cooking skills. Someone then asked if he saw her in a new light now. Milteen asked Ment about his plans for the future, and he replied that he would have to think about it slowly while recovering completely. She then asked if he would like to work on Elle's ranch. Ment was surprised to learn that Elle owned a ranch too. Elle explained that it was a recent development venture for him and expressed his happiness at having Ment work there. Ment then asked Milteen if she was already working there and inquired about her job in the mercenary group. Milteen replied that she had quit the mercenary group after his accident. When Ment asked for the reason, Milteen realized that the moment of truth had finally arrived. Nervously, she replied that she wanted to be by his side from now onwards. Elle, Noel, and Elena were keenly observing their conversation, expecting something eventful. Ment accepted the offer to work on the ranch, but told her that he needed to recover completely from his injury first. Milteen was happy to hear this, thinking that he had understood her true feelings for him. To everyone's shock and disappointment, Ment's reaction was totally different. He proceeded to ask Milteen about finding a boyfriend for her since she had left the mercenary group. Milteen was clearly heartbroken, but tried hard to hide it on her face. Ment continued, stating that since she was in the mercenary group, he couldn't imagine her having a boyfriend. Now that she wasn't working there, he suggested she should try finding someone of her age to date. Noel was confused, wondering how things had turned out this way. Ment then thanked Elle for the offer and asked when he should join him on the ranch. Elle, confused by the turn of events, bluntly replied that Ment could join them when he fully recovered. Elle apologized to Milteen in his head and realized that maybe sincerity doesn't always get through. After leaving Ment's house, everyone told Milteen not to lose hope, assuring her that there would be more chances in the future while working together on the ranch. Milteen faked being okay in front of the others, but after parting ways, she couldn't hold back her tears. Later, it became evident that Ment had actually understood what Milteen was trying to convey, but he too was confused about how he should act after that. The next day, the town buzzed with a celebratory atmosphere as confetti flew everywhere, and royal musicians blew their horns to welcome special guests to the kingdom. The crown prince of the Rurin Empire, Leon Harris, had arrived for a visit. In his mind, he remarked that the town always seemed peaceful and unimpressive whenever he visited. As Leon made his way through the crowd, two ladies couldn't contain their excitement over his handsome looks. Casually, he invited them to meet him in his room later that night. Behind the crown prince, the Duke of the Rurin Empire, Porgo Teymuran, wondered what the Greg family was doing. The chief magician, Madrin, informed him that they were preparing to welcome the guests. Porgo expressed dissatisfaction, suggesting that they should have welcomed them even before reaching the castle. He made it clear that since he had arrived, he intended to put an end to the Lord's games. Inside the castle, the young Greg Rurin was getting ready to welcome the guests. He inquired about his father's condition from the butler, who sadly revealed that she wasn't doing well and was ill. The butler emphasized that the young Greg had to represent the family now and meet the guests in place of his father. He reminded him that every word he spoke represented the Greg family. With this in mind, the young Greg headed out to greet the guests. The Duke initiated the conversation by asking Rurin about his father's health. Rurin replied that he was still bedridden. Expressing sympathy, the Crown Prince recalled that Rurin's father had been quite close to Marquis Sarin. Rurin confirmed this, mentioning that they hadn't met for a while. The Crown Prince then informed Rurin that even Marquis Sarin wasn't healthy these days. The Duke entered the conversation, introducing the topic of changing ownership. Rurin was surprised by the statement. The Duke continued by telling Rurin that he was asking him to join them. He promised Rurin that, in exchange for joining hands with the Crown Prince, his territory would be safe under their protection, and he wouldn't have to worry about the politics involved. The Duke asked Rurin about his thoughts regarding the matter, but Rurin was at a loss for words because of the pressure. He replied firmly that he was not in a position to answer at the moment. The Duke then shifted the conversation to the problems of the flood prevention plan and the civil war going on in the bordering kingdoms. He added that they would have to increase taxes for Great City and other regions to make up for the expenses in solving these problems. Rurin questioned the Duke if it was a direct order from the capital. The Duke dismissed the question as meaningless, and added that everything was pretty much in the Crown Prince's hands at the moment. However, if Rurin accepted the previous offer, the consequences would be different. The Duke pressured the young boy further, trying to extract an answer from him. He emphasized that making difficult choices was common for people in his position and questioned why it was so hard for him to make a decision, stating that not answering was not an option. Young Rurin thought of an idea to relieve the pressure on him. He invited the Crown Prince and the Duke to a dinner party, informing them that he would give them an answer after the dinner party. The Crown Prince accepted the proposal, and the Duke asked Rurin if he could satisfy someone who eats the best dishes at the royal palace. With El's restaurant in mind, Rurin confidently asserted that the Crown Prince would definitely love the food in their city's finest restaurant. Meanwhile, at El's restaurant, El called out to Miltine, who was working on the ranch, to join them for something to eat. Inside the restaurant, El served 2 plates of fried rice to Rurin and Miltine. Rurin questioned El about her portion getting smaller every day. El assured her there was enough on the plate, but if she wanted more, there was plenty in the kitchen. Suddenly, a knight marched through the door, drawing his sword. He asked El if he was the owner of the restaurant. El, trying to keep the situation calm, asked the knight to sheath his sword as there were customers present. However, the knight persisted aggressively, putting the sword to El's neck and demanding him to kneel. El's patience was wearing thin, and he issued a final warning. The knight, ignoring the warning, continued shouting aggressively. El was on the verge of using a spell against the knight when a familiar voice intervened. The first Night Order Vice Commander, Dariant Obere, entered the restaurant and ordered the knight to stop. He apologized to El, addressing him as Mr. Ellison, and reprimanded his subordinates, punishing them outside. The knight who had drawn his sword expressed ignorance about El being a friend, and his friends scolded him for going overboard. Dariant apologized to El, explaining that he had sent his knights ahead of him, fearing El might disappear again. El reassured Dariant, asking him to drop the formalities, as he had already left the army. El then asked how long it had been since they last met. Dariant revealed it had been 5 years. Inside the restaurant, Miltine wondered about El's true identity after witnessing the scene. A flashback revealed El coming to the rescue of Dariant and his group in a battle 5 years ago. Dariant vividly remembered the day when monstrous creatures attacked them while holding their position on the battlefield. Ellison intervened, defeating all the monsters with his magic and leading them to victory. After the battle, when Dariant was offered a reward, he insisted on being punished instead of receiving the award and gave it to El. He remarked that honor is everything for a knight. However, he didn't think it through back then, and his wife was very upset that him not receive the award. Dariant was all about honor, but amidst all this, he forgot to take care of the people closest to him. El came to his help again, and after receiving the reward money, he sent it to Dariant's house. El laughed it off, saying that Dariant deserved the reward for putting his life on the line while defending the position. Dariant told El that he always wanted to return El's favor by doing something for him, but he had already left the army. So, when he heard that El had opened a restaurant in Great City, he wanted to help him out there. He told El that if he closed every other restaurant in Great City, El's restaurant would turn out to be the best. With this, he called his knights and rushed towards the town. Elle was shocked at Darian's plan and shouted at him to stop. Meanwhile, Rurin was on his way to the restaurant along with the Crown Prince and the Duke. The Duke asked the Crown Prince if he was really going to have dinner in a common restaurant for the evening. The Crown Prince replied that since the young Count had recommended the place himself, he was looking forward to having dinner at the restaurant. The Duke then emphasized the fact that they should have at least called up their knights to accompany them on the route, as the circumstances were quite dangerous these days. The Crown Prince told him that he had relieved the knights from their duties until dinner time, so it wouldn't look good if he took back his words, and they didn't have to worry as they already had the powerful Archmage Madrine by their side. All of a sudden, arrows were fired in the Crown Prince's direction, but they were blocked by a magic shield created by Madrine. The attackers revealed themselves and demanded to hand over the Crown Prince, but the Duke ordered Madrine to finish all of them. The attackers recognized Madrine, but their leader made it clear that there would be no change of plans, and they jumped at her to attack. Madrine easily defeated the attackers and showed them the difference in their power levels. The Crown Prince is impressed by Madrine and calls her the mightiest mage in the whole empire. He exclaims that with her by his side, even dragons can't harm him. One of the attackers survives her massive attack, and she asks the Crown Prince what to do with him. The Crown Prince orders her to finish him off too, and with a snap of a finger, she completes the task. Rurin, having witnessed everything, realizes that the rumors of Madrine being the only 7th grade mage in the kingdom, capable of fighting a whole army on her own, are indeed true. Back in the restaurant, we see that Elle has used his magic to restrain Darian and stop him from destroying other restaurants in town. He states that Darian has always had a habit of not looking back when he gets excited and starts running. Elle asks him if this reminds him of the old days. Darian stands up and tells his knights to get back to their original position. Seeing Elle restraining Darian so effortlessly, his subordinates can't help but wonder how powerful Elle is. Darian tells Elle that he still holds on to his words as he wants to return Elle's favor. But Elle tells him that if he goes on destroying other restaurants, how will that make him a good knight? Darian corrects Elle by telling him that he was actually planning to tell the customers of other restaurants that their food has worms. He didn't mean to destroy them. Elle remarks that it's quite a creative idea, but not something he'd like Darian to do. Darian then promises Elle that he will think of something better. Darian then notices the arrival of the Crown Prince from the corner of his eyes. He orders his knights to get information instantly. The Crown Prince is surprised to see Darian there too. Darian greets the Crown Prince and states that he thought the Crown Prince would be at the castle. The Crown Prince too expresses being surprised. The Crown Prince tells him that he is there to have dinner at Elle's restaurant as the great city's young count has recommended the place himself. He adds that since he can't travel alone, he has brought company with him, indicating the Duke and Archmage Madrine. Elle recognizes Madrine right away. The Crown Prince then greets Elle, inquiring if he is the owner of the restaurant. Elle agrees and greets him warmly. Elle realizes that since the Crown Prince is in town, that justifies the presence of the First Order Knights. The Crown Prince tells Elle that he is looking forward to the food that can even make a royal go crazy. The Crown Prince notices that the dress Elle is wearing is the one old Imperial mages used to wear. Elle clears his confusion by telling them that he used to serve in the Mage Legion in the past, and he is only wearing it for comfort now. On knowing that Elle used to be in the Mage Legion, the Crown Prince asks him if he knew Madrine from before, pointing towards her. He tells him that she is a 7th class Archmage, and if he was in the Legion, he would certainly recognize her. Madrine recognizes Elle too, but is too scared to speak out his name. The Duke wonders why they are wasting their time in such a shabby-looking restaurant, and tells Madrine that the Crown Prince is calling her name. He adds that if she is feeling overworked for the day, she can go and rest for a while. Madrine apologizes for her absent-mindedness and gets down from her horse. She slowly walks towards Elle with haunting flashbacks of Elle from the past. She recalls how powerful Elle was and realizes that she must act wisely to save everyone from danger. Before she could speak to Elle initiates the conversation and tells her that he doesn't think they have met before. Madrine realizes that Ellison is trying to fake not knowing each other so as not to cause any trouble. She decides to play along and tells the Crown Prince that she has never met Elle before. The Crown Prince seems to be disappointed by this. She adds that having the Crown Prince as a guest should be a great honor, and he should start preparing the food right away, hoping that since they are faking it, Elle won't mind some rudeness from her. The guests enter the restaurant, and Miltine is still wondering about Elle's true identity while working outside on the ranch. As the guests take their seats inside, the Crown Prince expresses how the restaurant looks cleaner than he thought it would be. The Duke supports his claim too. Madrine also adds that the interior does look decent for an ordinary restaurant. Elle exclaims that he wasn't expecting such distinguished guests for the day. If they had known beforehand, he would have prepared something special for them. He then brings out a fancy candle stand to the table. The Crown Prince replies that it's fine as the only thing that matters in a restaurant is the quality of the food served. Elle decides to ask the Crown Prince about why he was there to have dinner in an ordinary restaurant. The Crown Prince tells Elle that he is looking forward to the food that can make even a royal go crazy, as suggested by the young Count of Great City himself, pointing towards Rurin. Elle finally realizes the type of situation he is in right now. With his father ill, Great City is on shaky grounds, and after not being able to handle the pressure of the power struggle, young Rurin has turned to Elle, seeking help. Elle looks around and recalls that the Duke sitting next to the Crown Prince is a power-hungry noble. He hates that he has to be in this situation, but he decides to help the kid, regardless. The Crown Prince then puts forward a shocking proposal in front of young Rurin. He calls him Great Boy and tells him that if he has so much confidence in Elle's restaurant, he should have some faith in them too. He tells Rurin that they should put a bet on the food. He explains that Elle must bring something that surprises the Crown Prince. If he fails to do so, Rurin will have to run around Great City without his clothes on. Rurin is shocked by the terms of the bet, but the Crown Prince pressurizes him further by adding that if he has so much confidence in Elle's cooking skills, he shouldn't be worrying about the terms of the bet. Elle breaks the tense situation by announcing that he will bring in the food quickly. The Crown Prince considers this as an acceptance of his bet. Elle thinks hard about what to prepare. As being royalty, the Crown Prince must have had all sorts of delicacies. It would be a difficult task to prepare something that would amaze him and the Duke. He decides to prepare mutton mushroom soup first as an appetizer to try his luck. The Crown Prince takes a spoonful of the soup to taste it. He expresses that the smell is good and the taste is delicious too, but it's not something extraordinary. He has had many mutton mushroom soups before, and this dish simply doesn't amaze him much. The Duke too shares the same opinion. Elle realizes that things are not going his way, so he is hoping for help. He expresses that he would like to hear everyone's opinions at the table. He had left a message for Madrine in her soup bowl, asking for a hot opinion. Madrine sees the message and out of fear she overacts, surprising everyone. After having a spoonful, she announces that the soup is delicious and describes Elle's cooking skills as 7th-class magic in the culinary world, and then corrects it by calling it not 7th, but 9th-class magic. Elle is taken aback by her overacting too, and he feels like killing her right now. The Crown Prince was very shocked at Madrine's reaction. He said that if she liked it so much, he would try it too. At the same time, Rurin also decided to try the soup. He was very curious as to why the Archmage himself had such a strong reaction to it. After tasting the soup, he noted that it was really good, and if not for the awkward atmosphere, he would have asked for more. However, he had doubts that the Archmage's reaction was due to the taste. After all, it was hard to believe that the royal mage had never tasted mushroom soup. But then there was another question. What had influenced Madrine to have such a reaction? After all, very few people in this world would be able to subdue a Class 7 mage. However, he still had one guess. He didn't really believe it, but when he looked at his teacher, he had a feeling that he wasn't as simple as it seemed at first glance. Elle headed for the kitchen and said he'd go make the next dish. Although his face was not visible, the aura he exuded spoke for itself about his mood. While he was preparing the next dish, the Crown Prince said a bit disappointedly that no matter how many times he tasted it, he couldn't notice much difference from the royal soup. Duke Tamaran turned to Madrine and said that he didn't expect her to like the mushroom soup so much and promised to add it to the royal menu. When she heard this, she panicked and said that it wasn't because she liked mushroom soup, but because it was special. To confirm her words, she immediately started eating the soup quickly and talking about how delicious it was. However, as soon as she finished, there was a surprise at the bottom of the bowl, namely a sign that said she had to leave the restaurant as soon as she finished eating. It was so unexpected that almost all the soup that was in her mouth immediately came out. While she was coughing and recovering, the Crown Prince asked Duke Tamaran bewilderedly if she had always been like this, to which the latter only shook his head negatively. After a while, Madrine managed to find an excuse and leave the restaurant. Waiting for her on the porch as expected was Elle. Madrine was very frightened, as she didn't know what to expect from the man standing in front of her. Finally daring to speak, she asked why he had called her. The next moment, Elle applied a soundproof barrier that prevented outsiders from hearing their conversation. This made the girl even more frightened. However, despite her misgivings, Elle showed no hostility. Turning around, he greeted her with a smile, before adding that she had played it perfectly. Despite her fear, Madrine tried to respond, but she was unable to do so, for the mood of the man standing in front of her had changed drastically. The murderous aura he emitted made it clear that he was angry. Turning to her, Elle said in a cold voice that he had already warned her that they shouldn't have met again. Madrine immediately panicked and started making excuses, saying that she didn't know they were coming here. As if he hadn't heard her words, he looked at her coldly and asked her why she had come here. She replied in a trembling voice that it was because of Duke Tamaran, who was traveling through small estates to increase his influence in the palace. However, that was not what our hero was asking. His main question was why she was together with the prince. The girl's face immediately covered with sweat. But Elle did not stop, and reminded her that he had a terrible reputation. He wallowed in lust and had no interest in the state. But it could only seem that way at first glance. Anyone from the outside could say that he only cared about himself and just enjoyed life. In addition, he had no claim to power, but as it turned out, he knew how to use his position to his own advantage. In fact, he just covered up his lecherous image and put pressure on the Baron. El originally thought Duke Timoran wanted to expand his influence by absorbing the town of Greek, but as it turned out, the Crown Prince himself was behind it. To fully understand the situation, he decided to ask her what was going on. However, that wasn't something Madrin could say. She immediately replied that she would not say anything even under torture, as it was an oath she could not break. The next moment a voice was heard, one that mockingly said that it might be worth a try, just to be sure. With tears in her eyes, Madrin looked up in fear at the person who had spoken. There stood none other than Rurin. Since they had met before, she knew it was a dragon. This was the limit of what she could endure. Falling to the ground and laughing hysterically, she said after a short pause that she just wanted to go home. After a while, Madrin walked back into the restaurant. Seeing her, the Duke and Crown Prince couldn't contain their surprise. Seeing that she was not in the best condition, they asked what happened to her. Smiling, she replied that she was fine and was just enjoying the aftertaste of the soup. Hearing this, the prince said with a smile that this soup was definitely a revelation for such a backwater restaurant. Then he looked at the slumped Duran and added that he was probably somewhere in the back of his mind, looking forward to the deal. There was one thing, however. Turning to Duke Timurin, the Crown Prince asked him to remind him what the terms of the dispute were. He immediately replied that he had to surprise the prince with a dish. Hearing this, the latter smiled mockingly and said that he was not in the mood for surprises today. Laughing mockingly, he added that on normal days, he would be satisfied with such a soup. Today, however, he had an important argument to win. Finally finished laughing, he asked if they understood what that meant. Without waiting for an answer, he said that it meant that he would not be surprised even if his sick father got up and started cooking. However, if he heard something that wasn't said in the mansion, he might change his mind. Turning to Duran, who was clenching his fists nervously from the weight of responsibility that was upon him, the Crown Prince asked if they would hear his answer now. The one replied that the position of Lord demanded a lot of responsibility. Therefore, he was willing to bear his own shame. However, he was not going to jeopardize the lives of the people of the kingdom. But at the same time, he believed in the success of this restaurant with all his soul. So he was not going to back down. He promised that if he lost, he would take off his clothes and run through the city. Without showing any emotion, the prince replied that he respected his choice. After a while, evening came. By this time, El had time to prepare a new dish. He returned to the guests and apologized for the long wait. Placing the bowl on the table, he solemnly announced that it was the main dish of the day. Hearing this, the Crown Prince asked if he was so sure of it, since a lot of things depended on the dish. Lifting the lid, our hero replied that he was more confident than ever. The dish on the plate was a bit different from what everyone had imagined, as it was more like a lump of clay. Duke Timurin immediately asked what it was, to which El replied honestly that it was baked mud. Hearing this, he asked in a cold voice if they would have to eat it. Taking out a hammer, our hero replied that of course not. He immediately pounded the clay with force, thus breaking it. As it turned out, there was indeed something under the mud. The Crown Prince was surprised to note that there was a salad inside. But it was not just any salad, for underneath it was nothing more than a polenta. Taking out a knife to cut the dish into pieces, El replied that this was indeed the case. The prince still couldn't believe his eyes and asked where this rare meat was from in such a backwater restaurant. Ignoring the rudeness, our hero replied that he rarely cooked it, but today was a special day. Cutting off juicy pieces of meat, he added that the outside of the dish looks like a mountain of dirt, and not everyone would know what it was. The thing was, there was a little surprise in the dish. While El was saying all this, the prince listened in silence. It was as if he began to guess what our hero was trying to tell him between the lines. With a bright smile, El added that the surprise was impossible to see unless you knew what the dish really looked like. For as soon as the sticky dirt peeled off, the juicy meat of the polenta was revealed. Acting as if he didn't understand, the Crown Prince asked our hero what he was talking about. Holding a piece of clay in his hand, he replied that he wasn't saying what it was all about, as it was just a dish. However, the next moment he said that he must have been familiar with the mass expulsion of nobles to strengthen the royal power, because it was very similar to the prince's jerk. From the prince's reaction, it was immediately clear that he didn't expect to be caught out so easily. To say nothing of the prince, everyone in the room was shocked by El's words. Without intending to stop, he added that the secret of the dish could not be revealed so easily. He looked at the Crown Prince, who had nothing but horror on his face, and asked if he agreed with him. El continued his thoughts and said that the empire had lost control of the capital because of the Dragon War, and the emperor had only been able to consolidate his power in a few cities. And to avoid a coup, with the emperor's power at an all-time low and the aristocracy on the rise, the Crown Prince had to find a way out. and that way out was to spread his power. The prince continued to sit with terror on his face. He felt completely defenseless as some restaurant owner saw right through him. "Look at me, I'm not interested in power, I'm completely harmless. I'm only interested in booze and money." Turning to everyone, El asked if this reminded them of anything. Duke Timorin, who was no longer able to listen to all this, asked if he was in his right mind and if he knew what he was talking about. As if not hearing his words, our hero replied that if they were willing to listen to more, he would be happy to tell them, as it would only get more interesting. He said that His Highness was actually pretending to regain his lost power. He began to slowly gather an army and prepare a strike against the nobles. Then smiling, he asked those present what they thought was going to happen next. However, the Duke didn't let anyone say anything. Abruptly jumping up from his seat, he called out to the commander of Darient's warriors in a fierce voice. The latter instantly opened the door and excitedly inquired about what had happened. Turning to our hero, Duke Timorin said in a cold voice that it was a curious theory, but he still didn't understand anything at all. Then he added that it still didn't matter anyway, because this restaurant as its owner was finished. Poor Darient was not at all happy to follow such an order. All he could do was wonder what Mr. Ellison had done. El grinned and asked if they thought they could get rid of him, to which Herzog immediately replied that talkers should have their tongues cut out. He immediately ordered Madrin to force our hero to kneel down. She was ready to do it herself, as long as she didn't follow the order. In a trembling voice, she replied that she could not do it. Hearing this, he angrily asked what was the matter. While Duke Timorin was trying to understand what was going on, El said with a smile that he understood everything. These words made the Duke even more angry, and he said that you want that person to be stripped of his head immediately. In the midst of all this tension that almost led to someone's death, the fork with a distinctive sound stabbed into a piece of meat, which the very next moment ended up in the Crown Prince's mouth. Without stopping there, he took another piece of meat. Everyone present stared at the prince with bewilderment and shock. He was now holding a large piece of meat in his hands and was happily saying that it was incredibly delicious. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he asked them why they were not frozen. Then pointing at the meat, he happily told them to try it too. The Duke apologized and said he couldn't do that. It didn't take long for the prince to react. Pounding his fist loudly on the table, he shouted furiously for him to start eating now. Not daring to disobey, he silently sat down and began slicing the meat. After a moment, he took a bite without much enthusiasm. Turning to him, the prince asked if he liked it. He replied that it was delicious. With a smile on his face, the prince asked if he had found it as amazing as he did. Having no other choice, he nodded in the affirmative and said that it was indeed so. Finished eating, the crown prince said he thought they had settled the dispute. Admitting defeat, he added that he would be lying if he said that the dish didn't surprise him. Congratulating Diran, he said he really deserved to win. Still not quite understanding what had happened, he awkwardly thanked the prince. Standing up from the table, the crown prince also thanked our hero. He praised him for the wonderful meal and said that it was time for them to leave. El asked him if he was expecting an answer from the baron. The crown prince replied that he was going to stay here for a couple of days anyway, as he had plans with the lovely ladies. However, in his mind he had already heard his answer. Heading towards the exit with Duke Tamaran and Madrin, the crown prince ordered all the knights to gather, as they had plans to return to the capital. In parting, he told our hero that he would not disturb him again. As soon as they left, only El and Diran remained in the room. The boy was still bewildered by what had happened, while our hero realized that it would not end here. However, we could think about that when it would happen. For now, they should be glad that everything went well, and glad that they were able to win the argument. Diran was very grateful to Al, because it was only thanks to him that they had won the argument. But he didn't understand why the crown prince had made such a decision at the last moment. After some thought, our hero answered that he didn't need to understand anything. He added that he didn't need to worry about anything as long as he was around. Deciding to change the subject, he said that now that the strangers were gone, it was a good time to enjoy the Palenza. El also praised the boy, and said that he held himself very well in front of such important people. At the same time, the crown prince and the others were on their way to the capital. You could tell from their looks that they were not in the best of moods. Darient didn't understand what had happened and why they were suddenly going back. The awkward silence that hung over the group was broken by the hereditary prince, who turned to Madrin. He asked if the cook was the man she had spoken of earlier. She replied that it was. Hearing this, Duke Timoran was shocked as he couldn't believe her words. "Confirm your hunch." The prince smiled. He was finally able to see the person Madrin said even the knights respected. Duke Timoran had also heard of this man. He realized that even with Madrin and the knight army together, they didn't stand a chance against this man. However, the crown prince was thinking about other things right now. He realized that until now, they had only used superficial tactics to consolidate power, but now he no longer wanted to do so. Remembering Diran's strong statement of betting his reputation on some backwater restaurant, he couldn't help but laugh. He wondered if he could continue the argument if he were in the boy's shoes, and would he be able to trust some commoner with his life? After a little thought, the prince said that they should start small, and this time do everything more slowly to gain trust. After all, the path they were about to take was more dangerous than running down the street naked. After a while, over the restaurant there were cheers of joy and a little tired cries that at last everything was ready. A tired L with a hammer in his hands looked happily at what was in front of him, while the girls had bewilderment and surprise on their faces. As it turned out, they were all looking at the big barn that our hero had built especially for the cows, which, judging by their happy eyes, liked it very much. But beautiful doesn't mean sturdy. Failing the crash test, in a few moments the barn was left only a pile of wooden sticks. The face of our hero who built it was hard to put into words. Rurin noted that it was a good thing that it had collapsed at once, because if the cows had been inside, they would surely have died. Sitting by the pile of rubble, Elle noted that it was probably not a good idea to build a building without understanding how to do it properly. Rurin immediately had a rather logical question. She wondered how he had managed to build the restaurant. However, the answer was quite simple. He didn't build it. It was built by the craftsman, and he simply put up a sign at the end. Realizing that they can't do without a stable, our hero said that they would have to try hard. It wasn't easy to find good architects. He immediately told Rurin to get ready, for their next goal was to visit the dwarf city. The dwarf settlement was located in the Miliorek Mountains. In the midst of the vast amount of gold, gems, and weapons sat some woman. The tanned woman turned out to be a red dragon siren. When she sensed the intrusion of the intruders, she said with anticipation that she would let them know whose territory they were in. But there was another side to her insidious manner. Like a child, she was happy that she finally had a reason to come out. She'd been bored all this time, and there weren't even any insignificant people to honor, and ideally tease them a little. Besides, because she hadn't shown up for so long, everyone had forgotten that she was the mistress of these territories. What was to say, she was so excited by the appearance of people that in her haste she didn't even look under her feet, for which, in the next moment, she paid the price. Even though she didn't hit her little finger, the pain from the blow was still very strong even for a dragon. In the meantime, Elle and Rurin continued their journey to the dwarf city. The dragon girl was tired of the journey and complained that her body was not made for walking on the mountains. Our hero tried to convince her that it was worth it. Still not understanding why he was so eager to find dwarves, Rurin asked him why they couldn't just find a good human architect. He replied that when it came to making things, no one could do it better than the dwarves. When she heard this, she excitedly replied that in that case, the city of dwarves must have been a very cool and interesting place. To which our hero replied that it was. Turning the corner, they indeed saw the entrance to the city of gnomes. At first, our heroes were happy that they could finally get there. However, after a closer look, they realized that what was in front of them was more like a ruin. Elle, who had been here before, was surprised that there were no guards at the entrance. Deciding to check what was wrong, he headed inside. But as soon as he looked inside, a look of horror appeared on his face. He realized why none of the dwarves were guarding the entrance. They were all dead. All that remained of the once legendary race were skeletons covered in dust. Rurin immediately alerted Elle that someone was probably already inside. Looking at the mountains of skeletons that were once living beings, our hero became enraged. He couldn't help but wonder who had done this. However, his thoughts were interrupted by the sensation of something dangerous approaching. In the next instant, something rumbled and fell on the entrance leading inside. The first to emerge from the column of dust was a red dragon's tail. Looking at Rurin, the owner of the tail was surprised to see that she was of the same race as Rurin. But her strength was not at the proper level, which was very disappointing. In front of our heroes was indeed a huge red dragon called Siren, who was showing who was in charge with her entire appearance. Smiling mockingly, Siren said she wondered who dared to invade her territory, but as it turned out, it was only one person and a juvenile dragon. From the moment the dragon appeared, Elle only stood silently. Although no emotion could be seen on his face, one could clearly tell from the atmosphere around him that he was in a bad mood. He was rarely this angry, however, what he saw was enough for that. Greeting Serene, he asked her in a cold voice, "Did you do it?" The dragon was very surprised by such directness, and she was perplexed to ask if he was really saying that to her. She started to ask him how dare he talk to dragons who were the pinnacle of life like that. However, he didn't let her finish. Interrupting her, Elle told her in an even darker and colder voice to just answer his previous question. Serene didn't realize who she was dealing with. So, unable to tolerate such an attitude, she began to gather fire in her mouth. Already in the next moment, a huge column of flame headed towards our heroes. Realizing that it was the fiery breath of an adult dragon, Rurin panicked and shouted to Al that it couldn't be blocked by a shield. Without turning around, he created a large magic circle behind him. The magical shield of even royal mages could hardly withstand a direct attack from an enraged dragon. However, our hero was far beyond their level. He was a Class 9 Archmage. In addition, he was now more angry than ever, and so such an attack wasn't a problem for him. Siren's attack was aimed precisely at the target. However, it was not destined to hit. Stopping half a meter away from El, the flames began to disappear. This turn of events left the dragon puzzled, as she didn't understand why her flames suddenly disappeared. But she didn't have time to be surprised, as in the very next instant, El had already used plasma burst magic. A large pillar of light shot out at Siren. The attack was so strong that she immediately let out a painful scream. Horrified at the wound caused by the attack, she wondered how a human could be capable of such a thing. Turning her gaze to our hero, she tried to realize who he really was. After some thought, she was able to remember. Returning back to human form, she said that she had heard before about the man who had killed many of her kin in the last war. Then turning to Rurin, she angrily asked why she was with that man. El wasn't going to listen to any of this and reminded her that he had asked her the question first. And if she wasn't going to answer, he wasn't going to be nice to her either. He immediately conjured up another magic circle, which sent shivers down Siren's spine. Realizing that she might die at this rate, she panicked and replied that she hadn't done anything, and that when she came here, everything was already destroyed. Hearing this, El stopped, even though he was angry. But he wasn't about to kill someone who had nothing to do with it. Serene immediately began to justify herself and tearfully apologized for being so rude to them. She also added that she hadn't seen a single living dwarf since coming here. With a painful groan, she rose to her feet and added that she could not say for sure whether the dwarves were alive or not, for there was a huge door inside which she had not been able to open. Hearing this, our hero immediately inquired what the door was and where it was located. Seeing his interest, Serene saw this question as her chance. A moment later, there was no trace of her pained and frightened look. Walking up to Al, she said in a sweet voice that she could take him there. Then she added that it would be more fun than walking with the baby. But her plans were quickly cut short by a kick from Rurin, who shouted furiously that El belonged to her and kicked her in the leg. As it turned out, it hit her right on the bruise. While the red dragon groaned in pain, Rurin irritably demanded that she tell them where the place was. After getting the answer, our heroes went to the dungeon, where the door was located in the deepest part of the dungeon. We're going to go to the Greek mansion, where Duran and his stepmother were sitting at the table. Turning to his mother, Diran told her that the crown prince and Count Tamaran had returned to the capital. When she heard this, she had little reaction. Bringing his fork to his mouth, he said that he had heard that she had not been feeling well lately, so he wanted to know if she was all right now. She replied with an expressionless face that she was fine, but seeing her blank stare, anyone could tell she wasn't. Noticing that she hadn't even touched her dessert, Diran said that if she didn't like the menu, she could just choose something else. Standing up from the table, she replied that he didn't need to worry about that. As soon as she left, Diran bit his lip frustratedly. He wanted to talk to his mother and find out what was wrong. But no matter how many times he tried, she wouldn't open up to him. At the same time, Verna Gray entered the room where her husband lay. Sitting by his bedside, she began to pour out her heart. She told him she couldn't take it anymore. The huge space she was in was a coffin to her. She couldn't feel truly free. Eating sweet desserts was like chewing sand. Clutching the sheet with her hand, she asked in desperation if he was listening to her. She repeated in a desperate voice that she couldn't hold on any longer, because every moment she spent with Diran was painful. As they entered the dwarf city, El and Lurin looked at the ruins of what had once been a thriving city. However, no matter how many times they tried, they were unable to find any signs of life. After inspecting the ruins, Lurin concluded that it had definitely been done by a dragon that had gone berserk. So she immediately suggested that Al go back and kick that red dragon's ass. She told him to calm down, because dragons were proud creatures, and she wouldn't lie to them. Soon they managed to get to some sort of huge door. As it was the only thing that had survived in the midst of the ruins, our hero concluded that it was the door that the red dragon siren had spoken of. Though the door bore numerous attack marks, it showed no signs of collapsing. The dwarves were truly masters of their craft. While Lurin tried to smash the door with her fists, El, as a man from the modern world, wondered if there was a button somewhere that would open the door. Though the door didn't open, suddenly the orb in the middle of it glowed with a bright light, and someone's voice ordered them to stop. Calling our heroes trespassers, he told them to leave as they were not welcome here. El was astonished, and wondered if the man who spoke was a dwarf. He also asked what had happened here, to which the voice replied that a red dragon had brought destruction to their land. These words came as a surprise. Lurin immediately started screaming furiously and saying that she knew it all along. With shouts of kicking that liar's ass, she tried to go back. But El stopped her in time. He told her to calm down and listen to the rest of the story. After hearing their family squabble, a voice from the door asked in surprise, "Red Dragon? Stop it! Calm down!" Ellison grabbed her in his arms and tried to calm Rurin down, but she instead tried to tell Ellison that by hitting them on their heads, the problem would get solved and then even the dwarves would open the door. Ellison knew when Rurin was angry she made no sense at times. This can be proved by what Rurin said before. He examines the door carefully, noting down every detail of the door. Based on the breath marks, he interpreted that several powerful dragons created this door together. By having a single glance at the door, one can tell that dragons are the strongest of all living beings, as also said by the door itself. Rurin thought they could find another red dragon and knock them out instead. But El had a strong plan in his mind and explained to her so. He explained how he likes to solve things peacefully and smiled. He questioned the door about how long it had been locked. The gold ball of the door replied that it had been approximately a year. When El learned about this, he quickly thought that many problems may have occurred during that time. His hands started to sweat thinking about the all issues, especially the food issues. All then asked the door if it was sure it did not want to open the door for him because they were there to help them only. The biggest question the door asked them was how it could trust them. It asked what was the proof that they were not the subordinates of a red dragon that destroyed their land. Unfortunately, they had no proof as they half-killed the last red dragon. Ellison got into some thoughts, but the black dragon that is Rurin asked the door if they looked like some subordinates of a red dragon to it. Rurin was saying something when her mouth was covered by Ellison respecting the door's decision. The door also mentioned how thankful it was for them to understand the position they were in. Ellison instructed Rurin to grab the backpack. The next moment, he gathered some coal, burned them up, and held a pan above the flames using some magic. The door saw him doing this and asked what they were doing right now out of curiosity. He explained how they have to go back up, and it is also quite a long way, hence they want to fill their stomachs up before starting the long journey back home. The door worried why they were doing that here out of all the places. Ellison asked why not, knowing there were no police or cops around there. Then he asked Rurin to get something from the backpack. Rurin grabbed the sausages that Ellison wanted, and he started to cut the individual sausages from their length. The door asked what this substance was. El replied that this is a sausage made by filling the intestines with minced meat and spices. He cooked up a delicious meal out of it. While it cooked, both of them mentioned how good it smelled. The door did not seem happy because they were underground, so the smell wouldn't disappear. Ellison goofily replied that it was a good thing because they could now smell the delicious smell longer. The door started to freak out about this smell and believed that they did not have any empathy. Someone in the background asked their chief, aka the door, to ask our heroes for a bite from their dish because they couldn't resist the aromatic smell. The chief tried to shut them up, but the smell was too powerful. Rurin finally guessed what Ellison's plan was from the start. El explained how they brought these food items to give them to the dwarfs as a present from the beginning, but according to the current situation, this was an impossible task. However, he wanted to know what happened and confronted the chief about it. Upon receiving no reply from the chief, Ellison quickly opened a bag and pulled out a large-sized can of beer. The dwarfs did not know anything about the can and its positive pressure to keep the beer preserved, and hence asked what was that sound that came when Ellison opened the can. He told the door that since he salted these sausages trying to make them last for as long as possible, it goes along well with a can of beer. Both Rurin and Ellison touched their can and enjoyed the food. As soon as Ellison asked permission to start enjoying their food, the door opened and Ellison smirked a little. The door excused if they could have one bite. The next moment, there were 7 delicious sausages on the frying pan getting cooked for the dwarves. Dwarfs' mouths watered unlimitedly watching those delicious sausages cook. Ellison guessed that they hadn't had a full meal in a while and knew that they had trouble with food shortages. He plated all the sausages for the dwarfs and gave them to them. He asked them to not swallow the food in a hurry because it could return into a choke. The dwarfs probably did not care as they hadn't had such good food and dug right in. Upon a single bite, their face quickly lit up, and the first words they spoke were how good the food tasted. The goggled dwarf even liked the beer and enjoyed the food. They also murmured about having to eat such meals again, while quickly emptying the frying pan full of sausages. The intelligent Ellison the Archmage said that he shouldn't give starving people alcohol, but he quickly changed his mind when he remembered that the dwarfs were not completely starving, and dwarfs also have a high alcohol tolerance. He asked the chief how the food tasted because he was the one ranting about the food being poisoned before. The chief replied that they all owed him a big one, as the food was great. Ellison was relieved and asked the chief to share the sausages with other dwarves as well. Then he came to the point and asked if there was a dwarf named Gultazar in there. The chief freaked out and asked how he knew about that name. Ellison replied that he met him once in the past, and there was something he wanted to tell the man. The chief understood that they knew each other and asked him to follow him as he wanted to personally lead them to him. Rurin kept putting the uncooked sausages on the pan and shouted that there were more of them. All the drunk dwarfs also enjoyed the moment. The dwarf leads them to the man through the little cave of theirs. All the people in the town were scared of the humans, and the older people advised the young ones to stay inside. The chief led them to a massive house made out of stones and wood which was guarded by two well-armored and powerful-looking dwarf guards. The chief kneeled and informed Gultazar about a human wanting to meet him. While the chief was doing this, Ellison asked if Rurin distributed all the sausages, to which she replied, "Of course she did." A sound from the inside ordered them to come inside the house. Ellison entered the house and said that it had been a while. Gultazar was an old dwarf with a big and long white beard and hair. The old dude also agreed that it really had been a while. They continued to show sadness upon meeting under these harsh circumstances. Gultazar also pointed out how Rurin was a noble being. He coughed a little and said that he was familiar with that aura of Rurin. The chief wondered who these two people were because the master guitar was speaking so formally with them. Gultazar asked what was the thing Ellison wanted to tell him. Ellison replied that Gultazar already knew what they were after and wanted to know about whatever happened here with an intense concerned look on his face. He asked, how did this famous dwarf mine that was doing well ended up in ruins? Gultazar sweated a bit, then finally revealed that it was because of an attack by the red dragon with his shaky voice. He continued that they defended themselves desperately, but it was not enough. In the end, only a few remaining survivors remained to guard this place. Remembering the red dragon from earlier, he asked if the red dragon who destroyed all their area happened to have red hair and horns that grew backwards. The old fellow replied that it was not just one, and they were attacked by a group of red dragons. The door with dragon claw marks came into Ellison's mind as he found out his assumption was correct. But he couldn't figure out one thing, which was that the red dragons who generally have big egos team up unless all of them went insane for some reason. He figured out that they probably had a goal that was more important than their egos. His powers told him that there was something around here. Both the chief of the dwarfs and the old Gultazar himself got a little stunned when they heard this. Gultazar then pressed a red button, which was located at the bottom of his round table, while saying that it should be fine to tell since it was a familiar person in front of him. He asked Ellison and Rurin to follow him inside a secret room that just opened after that press of the button and moving of the rack next to Gultazar's chair. He said that he had something to show them. He explained that this was not the first time they were attacked by red dragons while taking both of them through the dusty cave. He continued by saying that there had been several such attacks in the past requesting tributes simply just to kill time. But they were always able to protect this place because there was a being protecting them. The old dude chanted some spells to light up his blue ring. Suddenly, the wall in front of them dropped to show a massive skeleton of the noble and ancient dragon Kullard. He was the protector of the dwarves and the one who protected them from these pesky attacks also. Ellison's mind quickly made up some thoughts about this massive grave and how the dragon must have lived for more than 5,000 years. He quickly asked his old friend if they were receiving protection by performing sacrifices for him. Gultazar gave an indirect response that the dwarves had to protect this town at all costs. The old Gultazar told a little story about a dragon lord who made every other dragon obey. If these mighty dragons were united as one and acted together under one commander, then no kingdom nor the strongest warriors would be able to stop them, meaning that the will of a single living being can end up destroying the whole world. He showed an ancient dark blue-colored shiny marble, which was about the size of a cricket ball, could give birth to this rare dragon lord. Kullard was one of the dragons that could create this ancient marble. He hid it in this place and guarded it so that it wouldn't end up in the wrong hands. He explained how they needed several of the essences to birth a dragon lord. While listening to this story, Rurin started to feel bad. Her face was now covered in sweat. She started to see some flashbacks from her childhood when she was very little. She played in a cave. Suddenly her surroundings changed to one of her flashbacks in which her grandfather Mediana commanded someone to lock her up. A young beautiful lady told Rurin again that she could not come in here, but toddler Rurin replied that her grandfather was stupid and he wouldn't know anything, which was followed by a giggle. Rurin fell to the ground on her knee while crying heavily. She also remembered a shadow of a very big dragon extending its arm towards some other dragon's bloody caracas. That caracas was of her mother who died in the war. Ellison came up to Rurin and covered up her crying face, saying that it was 3 without any context. Now he added to his previous words that 3 of these essences can birth a dragon lord who can rule over all other dragons. Old Gultazar realized that they had already experienced the pain and apologized to them for making them remember those memories while putting the big marble away. He explained that the ancient marble is surrounded by painful and sad memories, and Kullard the dragon searched for a way to destroy this marble with them, but they never succeeded. Ellison told the old dude that they were planning to build a lair in Grake City and asked him to come to Grake with them and build a new village there. Gultazar's face quickly got red and covered with fear when he heard Ellison's idea of a new dwarf village. He explained that they did not want to create a new dragon lord with that marble, and hence this place had already become a target. It would get attacked by all kinds of dragons in search of that particular marble. Gultazar's voice revealed a real fear as his voice got even shakier when he said that leaving this place would be a hard challenge. Ellison knew that something like this would come as a reply and said that he was not forcing them to come because he knew that the home was the most important thing for the dwarves, and said the decision was up to them. The old dude did not move his muscles and stood next to the massive skeleton. While leaving the secret grave and the dwarf village, Ellison asked Ruben if she felt better now. She asked if it was all right for them to leave like that, and at least they should have taken the marble with them. El replied that he had already cast a few protective spells, hence to worry not. He knew that it wouldn't be easy to leave this place since they had lived here for a long time and there were many memories connected to it, but for the safety of all, they would have to, and explained this to Rurin while crossing through the half-dead city. On the other hand, Gultazar was sitting thinking about what Ellison said when the chief interrupted him, showing the delicious meal of sausages left by Ellison behind for them to enjoy. Gultazar's mind quickly got diverted upon even smelling the food and asked what this was. The chief explained that the human that was just here left it here, and the others were already eating it, even though he told them to wait as they couldn't help their hunger. The chief pulled the curtains to show the joy of each dwarf in the village. All the villagers enjoyed the delicious sausages with the chilled beer. Gultazar was stunned to see the village so happy again after a long time. One dwarf was distributing the beer cans among the others. Gultazar's eyes lit up with joy. Someone called Gultazar. We see that young Gultazar respected the old dragon Collard, who was lying down on the ground, asking if it is hard for them to live in this dark, closed, and small place. Gultazar happily replied that this place was only small for the dragon and not for the dwarf society, as it was very wide and big according to their height and size. The dragon laughed, saying that he always wondered how they endure it here. The young warrior gets angry and asks what it means by that, and reminds him that they were aware of how important their task was. The dragon also reminded him that his energy is enough to hide this essence, but there will be a point in time when he will not be around him anymore, and he will become a target for all the hostile dragons out there. Even the ancient powerful dragon told him to take the dwarves and leave this place upon his death. Gultazar was stunned that something like this could come from the dragon itself and questioned how he could both abandon him and their home. The dragon again made a funny face and laughed at how only a pile of bones would be left of him by then and not to worry about him. He was very mad and asked the dragon not to say things like this. Collard now turned very serious and told him if no one lived to remember him or this place, then all would become meaningless, and wanted the dwarves to survive. He believed that a dead being should not hold back the living and wanted to give them happiness in their life. We see a glance at how the original cave looked when the people lived happily. Collard said that he did not come here to lead them to their demise. Gultazar again did not understand whatever Sir Collard had just spoken and asked what he meant by all these. He tried to remind the great dragon about the number of help that he was already doing for them. Sir Collard again joked about it, as he never expected them to guard the marble on their own in the first place. Remembering this moment, Gultazar's hands shook intensely. Watching the villagers very happy and laughing, he apologized to Sir Collard and fell to the ground when he finally realized what Collard's words meant. Ellison and Rurin were passing through the broken and destroyed part of the village when suddenly a crowd of dwarves came behind them and asked them to stop for a moment. Gultazar, who led the crowd, said that he had changed his mind, which lit both dwarves and our heroes' faces up. The crowd boldly said that they would follow them and they would help them build the dragon's lair. The head of the group pleaded with El to accept them. And that is how the dwarf tribe came to Greg City, and the problem of constructing Rurin's lair got solved. Ellison left the job of building the lair in the hands of the dwarfs and realized the speed of their construction. Gultazar also asked him to place his trust in their job. He had to ask a question, which was if they could start right away. He explained that they did not starve for all that time, and all of them were physically fit, but it was just that everyone was craving sausages again. Welcoming the dwarves, Ellison replied that need not worry about food. Ellison asked Rurin if she liked the lair that was getting built just for her. She happily replied that she was looking forward to it. Suddenly, Ellison pulled out the big blue marble, saying that that was the only thing left now. This drew Rurin's attention. The old fellow gave the ring containing the marble to the powerful Archmage Ellison, saying that he already placed the fate of the tribe in his hands. Ellison made a funny face and jokingly asked Rurin if she wanted to absorb it, which made Rurin very angry. She even punched Ellison. Then Ellison said that in that case, he would keep it safe for the time being. Rurin felt that the birth of another dragon lord was an absolute no-go, and even Ellison believed in this thinking. Ellison remembered that they had another thing to take care of, which both El and Rurin looked forward to, because it had been a long time since their last outing. We saw the red dragon Serena crying that she nearly died and got kicked by a youngling, believing that she would never go out again. Who knows how true that will be, but yes. She heard a noise and turned seriously and shouted if it was someone named Garrett. She rudely shouted to Garrett to get lost, as she had nothing left to tell him. Of course, it was not Garrett, and else our heroes, Rurin and Ellison. El asked who the hell Garrett was savagely, and Rurin said that she was hiding here from them. Ellison remembered that she explained to them that they never received an offering before and asked why was her lair filled to the brim with shiny things. He explained that he had come here to ask her something, but they didn't need to do that now. Serena fell to the ground and cried in fear that she already told them everything earlier, and why does it always have to be her? "Who's Garrett?" questioned Ellison. "Did you attack the dwarves' mine with Garrett because, from the way you talked to him, it seems like Garrett is a fellow red dragon?" continued Ellison while casting a cyan-colored spell in his hands. Serena replied that this was not the case. She became very shy and murmured that Garrett was her ex. Ellison couldn't hear the murmur and asked her to repeat herself. Serena now got even shyer and her face turned dark red. She explained that Garrett was his ex who kept visiting her, so she thought that they were Garrett. Ellison looked idiotic when he heard this because he was trying to assault her and apologized. The Red Dragon continued that it had only been 6 months since she settled down here and had never come across a group of dragons. Rurin questioned her if she received all the gold as offerings upon having a glance at the surroundings. Serena quickly snapped her fingers to vaporize all the gold coins. She said that they were just an illusion, and that anything left was what she collected. Both Rurin and Ellison were stunned watching the illusion end slowly. She started to cry like a baby now and offered Ellison and Rurin to take anything that was left if they were still unhappy. She also called them meanies. At the restaurant, Ellison mentioned how much he regretted as they had made a big mistake. He had never seen a red dragon that upset. Rurin showed sadness for not finding out who destroyed the dwarves' mine at the end of the day. Ellison still regretted his decisions and said that there was nothing more that they could have asked Serena. He pulled out the marble and examined it while standing next to the glass rack. He knew that they would get to know the details over time as they have the marble now, mostly what the dragons are planning. When he was speaking this, the doorbell rang with Ment and Elena opening the door of the restaurant. Ment showed excitement in meeting Ellison after a while. Both of them greeted Ellison. Ellison was also happy to see them, but was even shocked when he saw Ment did not have his crutches with him and asked him if he was comfortable without them. Ment explained that he was not fully free yet, but it has healed quite nicely. After all, Elena helped him a lot. Elena refused to take any credit because she knew Ment's will was more impressive and powerful, which helped him recover much faster than expected. Ellison said that still, it was because Ment trusted her just like the rest of them did. Watching him say these words, Rurin got very jealous of Elena for the 1000th time. He asked Elena if her hospital had any problems these days. Elena happily replied that it had become much better, but there were still some weird guys. A while ago, Nellin and his mother came by to express their gratitude, and a lot of the miners from back then came along as well. We can clearly see that the jacked miners came to guard the hospital from these weird guys and questioned every person entering. Elena did not think it through and wondered why the number of patients was decreasing. Ellison guessed that Miss Rain's rumor worked out and smiled. Elena was mentioning something about the vegetable dressing Elle told her about, but suddenly Goltazar opened the wood door of their dungeon and scared Elena badly. She was about to fall on her leg. Without even noticing his surroundings, Goltazar questioned if the stewed chestnuts he gave them were left some more. Elena was very shocked to see a dwarf here, while Elle wondered if they had built that far already. Goltazar replied to Elena's shock that he indeed was a dwarf and not a monster. He said that he recognized her as an elf immediately and asked if he looked like any typical elf or other species. During this, Creston slammed both of the doors open and came running searching for Woobabelly like a hyena when it found food. It seemed like Ment did not notice his presence and was stunned when he heard him asking Elle the reason for the closure of the restaurant that happened yesterday. Goltazar mentioned that this place was way too sacred for an elf to be there, but Elena defended herself and gave the reason that she came here first. All took a deep breath and mentioned happily that now this place felt like a restaurant. Rurin quickly put on her apron and reminded Elle that he said that he wanted to enjoy a peaceful life once. Sometime later, they both prepared their favorite food for all their customers. Pizza for Ment, Woobabelly for Creston, sausages for the dwarves, and green salad for Dr. Elena. Ment quickly grabbed a slice of the pizza and enjoyed the cheese pull on it while mentioning that he missed this pizza so much. He wanted to learn to make one from Miltine. Miltian, who was sitting next to Rurin, turned red listening to this. Ellison asked them for a refill of food, and of course, these gremlins said yes. Goltazar, the chief of dwarves and a worker, touched their beer mugs together, enjoying their sausages happily. The whole restaurant was filled with happiness and pure vibes. Someone watched over these happy and pure vibes with not-so-good vibes. He saw Rurin feed Ellison the green salad. It was Dierin wearing a black cloak. He sat in sorrow and called for his teacher Ellison in a very silent tone. Dierin got scared down to his bones when Ellison suddenly opened the door next to him and asked if he called him. Elle questioned what he was doing there instead of coming inside. Dierin had no reply, but after a few seconds he asked if Elle could prepare desserts as well. Ellison is an all-rounder chef and replied that cooking desserts was something on his skill set. Upon hearing this, He quickly took a deep breath and kneeled in front of his master, begging him to prepare a tasty dessert for her mother, which she could enjoy with a smile on her face. Ellison wondered if by mother he meant Lord Grake's Verna. Some delicious-looking food is being cooked. The bearded cook asked a second cook if the soup was done. She replied that it was not yet cooked. The bearded cook advised her to keep looking for it so that it doesn't get burned. In front of the door stood Rurin, showing Ellison the castle's kitchen. He told him that all kinds of ingredients and tools were present here, and that if he needed anything, he just needed to tell Rurin about it. Ellison peeked into a cupboard and found that the kitchen was full of very expensive and rare ingredients. Indeed, the kitchen in the castle is on a different level, he thought. There are so many spices and condiments here that could never be seen in a normal restaurant's kitchen. And also, the chef seemed skilled. He continued to think. Rurin found it strange how the atmosphere here was not normally this tense. Ellison normally reminded him that he was in the kitchen where both mood and atmosphere are normally very, very tense. He also mentioned that people in high positions should not wander around here too much. Not minding that, Ellison picked up 2 ingredients to make a nice dessert and ensured that Rurin could start looking forward to dinner. At the dinner table, his mother did not even taste the dessert Elle prepared and thanked her for the food and stood up, leaving the dessert behind. Ellison was left devastated after this. Rurin tried to calm him down and said that he never imagined that she wouldn't even have a single bite. Ellison calmed himself down and told Rurin that it would have been worse if she had tried it and left the rest, and then confirmed if he heard it right when Rurin mentioned that she was keeping her distance from her child. He asked for details like since when she started doing this. Rurin explained that she was not like this in the beginning, and rather, she liked to eat desserts quite a bit. The reason she even opened up to use was because of a dessert. Verna commanded Rurin to stop running around the inside of the castle and reminded him that she taught him to not to do so. Rurin's mother was a very strict person, and he had not seen her smile for years after she came to the Great City. Rurin's father, Rurin, felt very sorry for her. When the city was being built, Rurin mentioned that Rurin listened to her very carefully and asked if she did not feel like being too strict with such a young child. While eating desserts, Verna replied that she was trying to teach him the etiquette of being a noble. We can clearly see Rurin having trouble eating his food on his own. Rurin asked if the reason for any smile on her face was also the same reason. He explained that he noticed it a while ago, but he felt like the burden on her shoulders was too big. During the 4 years, she never told him what kind of things she liked and wanted to do. He asked if it was too much to ask if she could be more comfortable around them, because this place was their new home now after all. Suddenly, Rurin noticed that the dessert plate of his wife was empty already. He mentioned that she already finished her dessert. Verna noticed that she finished it already and blushed a little, taking the plate in her hands. Rurin finally found something that her wife liked and was very happy about it. He explained that they had been leaving out the dessert part until now because they needed money to restore their territory. It won't be easy to get sugar as they are still at war, but Rurin will try his best that his wife can have her desserts. Young Rurin was very happy when he heard this. This was how they found out that Verna liked to eat desserts. And after that, his father bombarded her with various kinds of desserts. One day he brought a cake, another day some other desserts. One day he read the menu that was appetizer dessert, a main dessert, and a dessert. Rurin got confused. Very confused. His father got very crazy about his wife's hobby. He said that after dessert comes dessert, and that is not the new norm for them. That day, the food turned out to be too sweet for them to eat. Suddenly, both Rurin and Rurin noticed that, giggled a little, and asked them to stop as he had enough too. They both became very happy to see Verna laugh again one day. One day, young Rurin was walking through the veranda of the castle when he was next to a room. Suddenly, he heard someone scream that it did not make any sense that there had not been an heir up until now. Rurin got jump-scared. He put his ears next to the door to hear clearly. The voice inside said that it had been 5 years, and they had not received any news from her lately either. Suddenly the door opened, slamming little Rurin's face with a man wearing a black overcoat, warning Rurin's mother not to test his patience. When her mother came out, she noticed the little boy sitting on the ground. The little man asked her mother if there was something wrong. His mother said that there was nothing wrong and told him that the person was upset that he had not received any news from his father while giving Rurin a hand to stand up. Little Rurin quickly noticed that the person was the Lord of Dedran City, Count Dedran. His mother replied not to worry much about him as she belonged to the Great City and took Rurin to get some food. After having desserts with them, Verna became a different person. She still remained strict as usual, but she started to smile more often. We can see this proven when she scolded Rurin one time for not having etiquette, but later smiled and gave him a tissue to wipe off excess cream on his face. She was happy, and their family started to show the essence of a true family. But that time of happiness did not last long. One day, Rurin and Verna were learning to cook their own desserts. There lay a cream bread that was bursting with cream and did not look appetizing at all. Someone said that it was another failure. The chef advised Verna to be relaxed when squeezing the cream into the bread, while on the other hand, Diren did not mess up the bread and carefully added cream to it. Verna wanted to try one more time. She got a little angry when the chef told her that she did not need to have to do it by herself, but Verna believed that she could do it herself. Diren completed filling the cream into the bread and told everyone about it. Now Verna felt even more bad and embarrassed. She felt very sad and asked how he did it. Diren reminded her that once she said that hard work is beautiful. She was stunned to see her words get used upon her. During this, some men came running around, which angered the queen. She questioned who was the one running inside the castle. It was the butler of Diren Grake, looking for them to show them the urgent that they had to see. He revealed that Rurin has collapsed. Verna dropped her bad bread and came running to her room to find Rurin sitting on the bed. The cause of his bad health is unknown, and there was no trace of poison, and the symptoms are rare, making it difficult to determine the cause. The doctor said that the patient is unresponsive and has difficulty eating. Little Diren tried to wake up his father and cried unstoppably. He looked upwards to her mother to find her lacking all will and anger or sadness. The expression was so scary that he still remembers his mother's expression. From then on, Verna never touched any of the desserts offered to her and set a boundary between Diren and herself. He could only express his emotions through the butlers around him and couldn't hear any conversations or laughter. From then on, his every move became controlled. After living such a quiet life, he ended up running away to the teacher's restaurant. He missed the meals they had then. It turns out that while telling this story, the boy was crying his heart out. He used to be so happy when they would sit together and smile as they ate their meals, but it was now a utopian vision. He questioned if it was too unattainable of a dream to want that back. After some time, Ellison has exited the castle and is constantly thinking about what Diren told him. It seemed weird to him as there were so many parts of Countess Verna's actions that were difficult to explain. Just because Count Grake fell ill doesn't mean that she has to distance herself from Diren. He remembered that Diren was not her biological son, and wondered if that was the case, but then again if that was the case, she wouldn't have opened her heart to him in the first place. It seemed like Countess Verna fell in love with her husband even though it was initially an arranged marriage. Or at least she did back then. Ellison wondered what the actual reason was. What was the reason she distanced herself from her only family, Diren, even though she was fond of him? Suddenly, something hit El's mind and he spoke of only one word. Guilt. The next moment, Ellison called for Rurin, who was hiding something from him with a beer can lying next to her. We can clearly see that Rurin was drunk. She defended herself that she did not do anything wrong, even though no one accused her. Ellison said that he was not even trying to scold her, and that he only needed her to help him with something. Rurin asked what was the thing he needed a hand in. Ellison looked idiot asking her this, but continued that if she would feel sad if he suddenly collapsed and couldn't say anything, wouldn't she? When he heard that, she agreed. She just said, "Let's go." Rurin asked if he was leaving out too many things, but he continued to ask her again if she once liked desserts, and she suddenly didn't want to eat them. Rurin felt like El was drunk, and hence was the reason for his weird, idiotic questions. At the castle, Verna was feeding her husband Ryden. The room was cozy and lit up by a single bedside lamp. Ryden couldn't eat on his own because of his illness, and neither could he correctly swallow his food. He had an overgrown beard which was covered by the excess liquid food that was fed to him. Verna took a fancy napkin and cleaned his face. Someone called for her in the background when she was doing so. Some butler-like person opened the door silently and said it was almost time, as Count Dedrin came there. Verna put the food aside on the table and spoke that she understood. She stood up and left, leaving her husband and the food behind. As soon as the door closed, a blue magical portal appeared in front of the chair she was sitting on. Both El and Rurin came out from that portal, and El was relieved to see Verna leave. Rurin noticed the Count sitting like a statue in his bed and wondered if this really was the Count of the Great City. Instead of replying to her dumb question, El asked if she could fix him. Rurin quickly examined the patient and said that she couldn't fix him. El then asked if she could figure out the cause of the illness when he examined the food. She said that too much time had passed, and there was nothing they could do. She then asked El why they were her in the first place. While opening a drawer, he explained that he thought that there might be some clues left around here, as they did not know what Countess Verna's true intentions were. El noticed the Count looking in a single direction, ignoring the fact there were some intruders in his bedroom. Ellison also mentioned that it did not look like his eyes were out of focus, but seemed like he was looking elsewhere. Rurin also noticed this. When they both looked in that direction, they were looking straight in front of the piano that the Countess played. Ellison wondered why the Count was constantly staring at it, as if he was giving them a clue. Rurin found something and diverted his mind to it. She pulled out the thing she found, which was a secret document. El took it into his own hands and opened it and interpreted it. They both got very stunned, and Rurin mentioned that this was the reason. It was a document proving that Countess Verna embezzled Grake City's taxes. and it also contains detailed information on how and how much the taxes were faked. When they discovered her secret, Verna was heading towards a room through a dark alley. Ellison was so shocked to find out the person who wrote this. He quickly closed it and asked Rurin if she would love to visit the imperial capital right now. Ellison wanted her to go there and bring one person here. The Count watched over them to find a tax fraud. Verna opened a door to a well-lit-up room while mentioning that a person called for her and called him father. It was the same guy from Dairon's flashback who wore a black long overcoat. It was Count Baltor Dedran, the Lord of Dedran City, and apparently the father of Verna. He mentioned that it indeed has been a while. Someone knocked on the door of young Baron Dieren's room. Dieren wondered who I could be at such a time midnight. The door opened with the hamburger delivery man that it was him. Dieren was stunned to see his teacher because he thought his teacher went to his house or restaurant. Not minding that, Ellison handed him the document that contained all the crime records of Dieren's mother, Verna. Ellison wanted Dieren to read the document. Dieren opened the document and inquired what it could be. He was put in disbelief upon reading that his mother was stealing taxes from the Great City and sending them to Dedran City. Ellison shushed him down, knowing that the Count of Dedran was present in this castle and knew that there should be no one awake at such a late time. They both started to whisper instead. Dieren realized the real reason for Verna's sudden distance from him and asked who had collected all this info. Ellison asked him to check the last part of the document as it was written there. Upon reading the name, he was left almost like a statue for a bit, with him dropping the document on the ground suddenly. Ellison also said that it was not written down by someone else, and then revealed that it was written by Countess Verna herself. The last part of the document read, "With this, I, Verna Grake, acknowledge all of the aforementioned crimes." Dieren was very curious to know why his mother confessed her crime at the end. Ellison replied that they could find it right now and used a purple-colored spell that he said he used in dire situations only. He again mentioned that the Count of Dedran was present here. Even the shadow of the Count of Dedran gave us evil vibes, but also his face did the same. Verna asked her father why he popped out there all of a sudden. He simply said a typical line, which was if he needed permission to meet his daughter. Verna had a cold stare and did not even flinch, saying that they were never that close. Baltor also mentioned how cold this reply was while whipping something off his face. He briefly mentioned that he heard some news from Great City recently. The Crown Prince and Duke Tamaran visited Great City recently, and Diera welcomed them. He was so furious to know that daring little kid, Dieren treated them quite too well. He also thought that this was different from what he was told. Verna tried to defend herself and said that she had no involvement in that. According to him, he heard that Dieren was someone who couldn't do anything on his own, let alone welcoming the Crown Prince and the Duke. He wanted to know how he found some confidence all of a sudden. And then he continued to blather about things and threatened to make Dieren like Ridden as well. Verna quickly snapped out of existence when she heard these words. She finally knew who made Ridden ill, and the same person was about to do the same to her child. Verna shakingly asked if this was true. Instead of replying, the evil madman bragged about it and said that this was one of the things he did without telling her. His face looked like a true Joker evil madman when revealed that he was the man who poisoned Ridden and revealed his plans for doing the same to her child Dieren next. The mother quickly cursed at her father and threatened him not to touch Dieren ever. The evil madman simply said that he was not there to ask her for her opinion. Suddenly, one of his butlers threw a rope at her and tied her up. The poor lady yearned for pain. Both Ellison and Dieren heard all this from the portal-type spell he cast. Baltori asked the guards to be careful, as Verna should not get hurt yet. Ellison noticed that Dedran fed Kofdel poison, and this was the reason why Countess Verna wrote a confession letter to use against Dedran. Dedran commanded the guards to lock Verna up in the basement so that no one could find her. Dieren slammed his palm on the table in anger and wanted to summon all the soldiers in the castle right then, but instead of helping him, Ellison cast a spell on him that locked him up. Dieren became even more furious about why his teacher did that. Ellison gave the reason that considering the situation right now, Dedran's people have infiltrated the castle to the point where they were able to poison the food and kidnap the countess. He asked if he could really trust the soldiers in this castle. Dieren replied that they would be able to achieve it when Ellison helped him. Ellison knew this coming and said that if he helped, they would be able to catch them. But it would be unlikely that Dedran would carry the poison on him, and even if they caught them, it would be difficult to prove the kidnapping of the countess and poisoning of the count. While picking up the confession document that laid on the ground, Ellison figured out that Dieren was thinking about using the confession document as evidence and showed an aspect in which Countess Verna could also get punished. Dieren nervously asked what they could do. Ellison planned to create evidence and a situation to prove it. Suddenly, Rurin's portal was projected at the room and she came out holding a lady, while Ellison said that they lacked a person of high ranking who could provide solid testimony. Rurin asked if this was the right person. Ellison's spell broke away when they saw Rurin. Dieren wondered what she was doing holding a captured lady. Ellison happily informed me that he had a full-on solid plan that could work out. He asked Diren if he could act a little bit. It was about the time in the morning when the breakfasts were served to the residents of the Great City Castle. A cloth cover was removed from Verna's face. Dedren asked if she was all right getting held by rope in the basement and then told her that it was already morning time but the sunlight never reached her. He then told her that they had somewhere to go and asked her to follow him. The clothes that were put inside Verna's mouth were removed, and the first thing she spoke about was why he wanted her to follow him. She continued that she even stole Great City's taxes and scolded Diren's every move. She did everything he wanted her to. She wanted to know the reason behind him doing such things, even if she did all that for him. He opened the door and said that Diren's actions were too much of a threat for him to spare him. The guard held Verna and followed Dedren's lead. While on the spiral stairs to the ground level, Dedren revealed that he tried to poison Diren first. He wanted to obtain Great City using a more conventional method after she had borne an heir. Perhaps Rurin was infertile, or she was just lacking charm. Then he grabbed Verna from her hair and said that it seemed like she already knew she was the one who poisoned Rurin. He threw her on the ground using some force that smacked her head on the ground, making her bleed. He wanted Verna to act because she should have looked more surprised when he revealed that he poisoned Rurin. Verna still tried to beg for Diren's life, but Dedren said even if she begged, his breakfast had already been poisoned, which meant he was already poised. Dedren opened the door to reveal the poor Diren sitting just like his father does after getting poisoned. Dedren felt petty for Verna and told her that she should have heard herself speak. Dedren said not to worry because Diren might definitely end up like his father instead. Verna's shaky voice spoke that he was a true monster in the body of a human when she finally cried for her child for once. She was so disgusted to share the same blood with him. One of the guards of Dedren brought the confession documentation. He said that he found this in Count Ridden's bedroom. Dedren opened it and read it through. He was stunned to see the evidence that Countess Verna had been gathering evidence that she stole Great City's fund and taxes under Dedren's orders. Verna quickly noticed the document and started to beg Dedren to not destroy it while the guards held her over. Dedren laughed an evil laugh that he found a hidden evil card that she had been hiding as expected from his daughter. He quickly burned it over the low-heat flames of the two of the candles placed in Diren's room, destroying the only evidence against him. Dedren made up a story that after her husband lost his mind, she lived with only her son in mind, but the son also ended up in the same way. Dedren pulled out a dagger and continued to tell the story that in despair, she killed her husband and son and then killed herself. We can guess from his words that he will first kill Diren, then Rurin, and then Verna. He mentioned how perfect of a story he made up while celebrating victory and walking up to Diren to kill him. The guard holding Verna asked if she was all right. As soon as he was about to attack the Baron Diren, a red shield appeared in front of Diren that protected him from the injuries, and the guard turned out to be Ellison, saying that that was not how a perfect story worked. When the dagger touched the red shield, it burnt the dagger, burning Dedren's hand very badly. The lady from earlier appeared and accused him of attempted murder against the Count of Great City. Dedren knew that the person in front of him was magician Medrin from the Imperial Court. Diren moved in the background and surprised everyone when he said that it was all over for him now. Verna started to cry in happiness upon knowing that his child was safe and sound. Injured Verna thanked God for helping her family. Diren was safe and sound, and Dedren's sinful crimes had been caught on. When Diren spoke, Dedren looked back and saw him safe and looked at him in horror as if Diren was some kind of terrifying monster. He asked how he was even speaking. The magician Medrin warned him to not resist, as any resistance was futile. She commanded him to be obedient and to follow the Imperial Palace's orders. Dedren knew that he messed up really badly and rubbed his teeth together because of it. He quickly changed his mood and asked what the hell she was talking about. He explained how he only kept this dagger on himself for self-defense, and that he didn't have the slightest intention of hurting Baron Diren, and asked what she meant by attempted murder of the great father and son, and mentioned that Count Rurin was already suffering from a disease. Medrin knew that he would say things like that and showed him the food she took away that Diren was supposed to have. She asked him to eat the food and prove his innocence if that was the case. Dedren's plan quickly backfired again on him. To prove his innocence, he shakingly picked up the bread, mushed it a little, and threw it aside, spoiling all the food. He also pointed his dagger at Medrin while asking if she thought that he was the one who had committed a crime here. He cursed at her daughter, saying that she had been laundering the taxes of the great city for several years, and asked for equality if they were going to discuss people's crimes. Diren from behind said that he did not know what he was talking about, because where was the evidence for Verna's crimes? He showed the ashes of the burnt document, mocking him. Dedren was very angry at Baron Diren and then asked his soldiers if they were just going to keep watching and not going to do anything. As the Count commands, they start to run towards the Imperial Palace's magician, Medrin. Suddenly, a wall appeared out from the ground that Medrin only snapped her finger for, on which both soldiers smacked their heads badly. Medrin's eyes turned blood red when she savagely spoke that there were things in the world they must not mess with at all costs. Whether you are the Night Order's captain, a renowned duke, or even the emperor. And it goes for everyone. Yet a mere noble from the border. Do you dare to cross that line? First Night Order is asked to eliminate the pests that have come into Great City. The knight headed right towards the castle with all his associates. On the inside, Medrin captured Dedrin in a spell and was performing something on him. Soon after, the First Night Order, who was sent to eliminate all pests, captured all the soldiers of Dedrin and even his butler, along with the poison supplier cook that was new in the kitchen. Ellison was happy to see that they were almost done with the matters here. He opened Verna's rope with his spell and informed them that he would be going now since the Baron was safe. Verna was still confused about who on the earth he was, but her mind was quickly diverted when she heard Diren calling for his mother. He asked if she was okay as she was hurt. She said that he does not have to worry about her. She was thankful to God that Diren was okay. Diren noticed that she was not looking him in the eye and confronted her about this matter. She replied that she was a criminal and did not have the right to look in the eye. She explained that this happened to him because of herself. As if that was not enough, she also committed doing embezzlement of taxes. She knew that Count Dedrin was a criminal, and yet she so shamelessly continued with her life in the city. In the end, she even puts her child in danger of death. She apologized to her son for doing that. She asked for no apology acceptance. Diren asked if she was living by suppressing her guilt inside always, and then asked why would she need forgiveness because Count Dedrin was the one at fault here, and not her. He then screamed at her mother asking why did she hand over these documents without even telling him. He asked if she thought that she would be grateful if she joined Count Dedrin in the prison. She should have at least told him no matter what happened, what situation she was in, she should have told him. Diren believed. Then he added that he and his father should have been informed about whatever was going on. The scroll of the burnt document dropped on the floor with some tears. While crying, Diren promised that he would stay by his family no matter what. This is what family meant to him, and pleaded to her mother to raise her head proudly. Verna extended her hand apologizing and she hugged her child. She was still asking for an apology and almost choked on her own saliva. She admitted that she had been foolish over the years. A little later, two knights pulled a cart with Dedrin inside. They were about to reach Dedrin City. The feudal lord's castle. Dedrin cried to get these ropes off him. He was trying to show his powers over them, but it didn't work out. One knight asked the other if he would send away all the employees within the castle. The other said that contacted the castle to make sure no one was there in the castle. Dedrin became even pissed over the course of their journey. According to him, they were making a big mistake as he had many connections in the imperial palace. When he gets out of this prison, he will kill the two of them first. Someone stepped on a blue spell. That person asked who the hell does he think he was? That certain someone was Ellison with his iconic blue-colored spells. He asked who the hell was Dedrin to spout that nonsense about and thought this was really daring of him. Dedrin was quickly put in fear and was scared for life. He asked El if he was a mage sent by the Empire. El did not reply and asked him the reason for his sinful crime even after having such a vast castle and territory. Ellison quickly asked a powerful red spell. He exclaimed that this vast castle could be fragile too. At that moment, the earth started to shake crazily. Dedrin was put to disbelief when he saw what was happening. At the castle of the Great City, Verna was surprised to see that Diaren prepared the delicious desserts for her dear mother. He explained that they wanted to eat together with her outside, so he prepared this for her. It was a dessert party with some of the rare desserts of all time. Also, everyone from Diaren's friends was present there. Mrs. Rain was there along with Kristen, Rurin, Miss Elena, Ment, Miltine, and some other people. Verna became a little shy to see this. Magician Madrine called everyone and diverted their attention to the direction of Dedrin City. To commemorate today's party, there will be a special performance, she exclaimed. All turned their heads towards that particular direction. Everyone was shocked to the Dedrin's castle in the air, which was then cut into from different angles that destroyed all of the castle. Baltore Dedrin cried and asked for forgiveness, but the blue evil mage did not listen to him and reminded him that he will not really see any light from now on, so he should enjoy while he can and shouldn't waste crying. From a far distance, it just seemed like a normal blue firework. Everyone at the table felt very special. Diren asked his mother what she thought about this firework just for her. She picked up a cream bread and started to eat it while crying and said only one word, that this was the best dinner party ever she had. They all stuffed their mouths with food and enjoyed their evening. Milstein was constantly looking at Ment instead of eating the food herself. The night hit soon and everybody left for their houses. Verna revealed that it has been so long since she ate desserts without having any worries, as that castle that kept her confined has not been shattered. Verna looked out the window towards the moon and enjoyed the peaceful end. She told her husband to not worry about De'Aaron. She committed being foolish, and from now she has decided to not run away because of guilt. Verna gave her basically paralyzed husband food and wiped the crumbs off of his face. She said that she had something to tell that she was unable to talk about till now. She admitted being late and wanted this to be sooner, but then said that she was grateful to be able to say it now at least. According to her, she had gathered up the courage to say it and wanted Ridden to listen closely. She grabbed Ridden's hand gently between both her palms and started to speak. She said that his wife, Verna Grake, sincerely loves her husband, Ridden Grake, and hugged her very cutely and gently. De'Aaron was standing against the door listening to her parents and was happy to have a happy ending. On the other side, things were not looking great for Dedran. When the public came to know about Dedran's sinful activities with Grake City, each and every person in the city came next to Dedran's cart and protested against him. People threw all kinds of stuff at him and his cart. Some of them threw actual hard rocks to injure him or something. But not minding the hate, he carried on with the sorrow of his castle getting destroyed. The First Night Order from earlier put his sword in its sheath while saying that they could not be at ease even though they weeded out several spies. He asked Elle to be careful in the future as well. Ellison appreciated the hard work Dariant put into this case. Dariant wanted to confirm if Madrine was not the only one who was kidnapped at night. Ellison tried to dodge the question, but then laughed and said that urgent situations made him do things like that. He then asked his friend if Duke Tamaran said anything about this case. Dariant said that he was confused at first, but couldn't refute it when he heard that Ellison was in charge. If he saw this, maybe he would have wanted to come in person, Dariant said. They stood in front of the place where the castle was placed. Dariant was very stunned to see that he was even stronger in his prime, but not as much as he is right now. Ellison said that it was a quite spectacular sight, just like a cannon fire. He believes that all the Grake City needs to look forward to is a brighter tomorrow. The next day, instead of a greater and brighter tomorrow, it was a dull and dark day because of the heavy rain and thunderstorms. Both Rurin and Ellison felt idiotic after they believed that the tomorrow would be brighter. Rurin was just sad as she had to do laundry that day. On the other side of the story, the romantic couple were trying their best to hold the fence and protect the animals from thunderstorms. Suddenly, Miltine was hit by a broken fence on her stomach. Both of the ranchers are inside the restaurant after she got hit. Ellison, being a good boss, forbidden them from going outside to do any work-related activity because of the weather conditions, and handed them a soft towel. All three, Rurin, Ment, and Miltine, were soaked in water. He asked if they were fine with the rule for today. The ranchers were sad about the broken fence, and Rurin was sad about the laundry. He told them that they could help out by serving the customers today, as they had a lot of customers even with the weather conditions. Ellison told Rurin to get dry first because of her wet clothes. He patted her hair with a dry towel to dry it. He gave a towel to each Miltine and Ment. Both were very shy to do anything in front of each other. Ellison was drying Rurin when a person came inside the restaurant. He exclaimed what a lovely sight it was. This person was named Venin. Ellison quickly looked up towards the person and wondered about something. It was some bearded man who had a water-reflective coat to keep him dry. He exclaimed that the place seemed warmer regardless of the weather. He asked what was on the menu for today. Chef Ellison brought the food out to the table on his own. It was some kind of a delicious-looking stew with plenty of vegetables inside. Ellison apologized to the man for the long wait. Venin questioned if they stopped making palenque. Ellison replied that this is noodles made with palenque broth, and there have been more customers at Mr. Knoll's shop recently. The man asked if the fruit garden was okay with the bad weather. He wanted to know if Ellison tried to buy the fruit garden when they moved here. Venin believed that it was a good thing they weren't able to. Elle laughed about it and said that the price was several times higher than the original market price, and there was no way he would go bankrupt so easily. Venin also laughed. While eating a fork full of noodles, he said that the rain would not stop if he stayed standing next to the fruit garden, and he had put up a little defense to protect it. As soon as he ate the noodles, he was overwhelmed by the taste of the food. He exclaimed that it was really worth it to get through the rain. Venin noticed that Elle was suddenly away from his table talking to Rurin, soaked in water, holding a wet towel, angry at him for asking her to wipe. Ellison tried to calm her down by excusing a customer. He heard their conversation. Rurin said that she was leaving and she was about to catch a cold. Venin asked Ellison while himself a drink and asked him if has ever made a decision that he regretted for the rest of his life. Ellison got very confused about this question. Venin repeated himself and elaborated that he asked if he ever made a decision that he would have never made if you could turn back time. A decision that he recalls each time he closes his eyes and breaks his heart, pointing out that maybe her relationship with her so-called wife was not good. Ellison was filled with disgust and told him that Rurin and he were not like that. Venin then started to tell a story when he was still alone, but there was a point of time when he used to love someone. 30 years ago, since he was only 10 years old, he only loved one person. In other words, she was a childhood friend. He admitted not loving any other woman aside from her. Ellison was listening carefully to his every word. He still remembered the name of the woman, which was Miel. No matter how much time has passed, he could never forget that name. El was surprised to know that he loved her for 30 years. He asked Venin why did not he ever confess his feelings to her. He replied that he already told him that this was the decision he regretted. Venin started to tell a story about his past. He was a clueless kid. He liked being with her and thought that they would naturally end up together if things continued that way. That's what he thought. It wasn't until they grew older and she started to talk about marriage that he came to his senses. And by that time, she was already in talks for marriage with someone else and Miel was about to leave for a neighboring city. He finally gained the courage to tell her and asked her to meet him outside Great City to discuss something. He was going to tell her everything then and there. While heading there on a peaceful night, he never got to meet her because a red dragon destroyed the city. This was around the place when Ellison was brought into this magical world. Ellison was also sad and asked if she survived. Venin replied that 15 years ago, they were at war with the dragons, and he ran away. After that, he heard that she was safe, but he couldn't bring himself to look for her. He couldn't keep his promise to meet her because he was a coward. He heard that Miel, who he hadn't seen for 15 years, returned to Great City a while ago, so he came back here too. He asked if El did not understand how he felt. He only felt regret and torment because of that day, and he couldn't forget or revert it. While telling this story, Venin ate all of his food and put the money on the table. Even though he misses her every day, he cannot go out to the streets for fear of running into Miel. He advised El to treat her wife well, so that even if she leaves tomorrow, he won't have any regrets. Venin put his coat back and left. Rurin was sleeping on the right side of the bed. On the night of that rainy day, Ellison was about to go to sleep, but he was stopped by Venin's story. He smiled a little, looking at Rurin, thinking about missing someone for 15 years. Then it stuck. What if it has been 150 years for Rurin? He blushed a little and then changed his mind. He got into the same bed as Rurin, remembering that he said she had not been in Great City for long, and then made up his mind to ask about her tomorrow. Ellison asked about Miel from Mrs. Rain, who was a social god. Mrs. Rain got very excited and told everything about her, that she recently opened a repair shop here, and they got really close recently. Ellison was surprised to see her social skills. Mrs. Rain asked why he asked about her, as she looked quite worried about something recently. Ellison wondered what it could be. Rain explained how she said with a sad look on her face, out of nowhere, the last time they met. She asked the same question Venin asked Ellison. Ellison was just stunned to hear that, as he remembered that it was the same question Venin asked him. Rain got surprised when she heard the name of Mr. Venin, and she confirms the Mr. Venin who manages the orchard. Mick asked Rain little more about what she talked about. Rain remembers when they both were talking. The old lady asked Rain if she always lived here. But Rain didn't live here from always. After moving here and there because of the war, she settled down with her husband. The old lady asked this question because her face isn't a familiar one, and she also mentions that she left Great City 15 years ago and only came back recently. Rain got surprised to hear 15 years, and she asked the old lady the reason to leave the city. The reason was that she loved someone and she to love him, but she couldn't bear to see that person. 15 years ago, the person she loves asked her to meet for one last time, but she was unable to. She ran away from that place. But the person she loves bought flour and arrived at the place they were supposed to meet. She ran away from that place like a coward. Now back to the real-time MC thinks about this, and mentioned that the person Miel, the old lady, talking about is none other than Enar Venin. Rain got surprised to hear this. She asked about her regret and also about Enar Venin. Then our boy explained her that they both went to the place they were supposed to meet, and they both ran away from the dragon attack. They both think they ran away and left the other person alone. And they both are still left with regrets, even after 15 years. Rain becomes so sad because this is so unfair. Miel said that she has lived single since then, refusing all the marriage talks her father had tried to make her accept. But she lived in guilt for so long, all because of one single misunderstanding. Meek tells her to not worry so much about this because he have some plan, and ask Rain to tell Miel about this. Scene change, and we see hand of Ellison giving a box to Mr. Venin. Mr. Venin, who was picking apples from the trees, look at him with the uninterested face and ask him what is that. These are magnifying glasses to give as a gift, because Miel says her eyes have been quite bad lately. If her eyes feel tired while using them, you can bring them to Missy G. Will make sure to adjust them. Mac tell him today, Miel will be waiting for him at the Great City out walls. He can give it to her. Then when Venin hears his, he becomes sweetie from fear and asks Missy what he is talking about, because he can't meet her. Mac tell him he said it was a decision he regretted, so why he refusing now? Our boy believed that anyone can make such a mistake. There is no one who doesn't make mistakes, and no one who can predict the future either. But worrying about the same problem is another issue entirely, and ask Venom about if he know what he have to do. Scene change, and now it's night. We see Venom coming. His steps are feeling heavy. He thinking to himself if she be angry with him and call him a coward, because he ran away after all, and it's been 15 years. And what if she doesn't come? He started crying because he missed her so much, but suddenly we see some girl standing in front of the tree. She is none other than Meal. Her face is towards the village house. Venom eyes filled with tears because just like he expected, it is pointless. Right. Then Meal turned her face towards him and called his name, Venom. With sweets in his face, he asked if it is really her Meal. She tell him he is an idiot. He almost ran away again. That's not what he were supposed to do. Meal have something to tell him about that day. Venom become confused. How if even she curse him out or insult him, he is fine with that. Their biggest regrets in life and an apology for that day. They both say sorry at the same time for not being able to meet them on that day 15 years ago. Both become shocked because they have said the same thing in the same time. They didn't expect that. Suddenly Meal starts smiling. And in a second, both began to laugh. Looks like now they don't have any confusion and everything is all right now. Rurin, who is watching all these, become happy because now the misunderstanding has been resolved. She asked MC why didn't he tell them the truth beforehand. MC didn't tell because this is the issue that both of them had to resolve on their own. They can't be the ones to tell them. Still, it's unfair for Rain because they spent such a long time apart because of a simple misunderstanding. But MC is happy because it is resolved now. It an incident that has tormented them for 15 years. And they ended up meeting again, which is a good thing for both of them. Now they are holding hands of each other. And so the two of them returned to Great City, not letting go of each other's hands. And they came to the restaurant together a few days later to tell Mick the orchard that he had cherished for so long. But of course our boy have to pay the full price of it. Apparently, it was for building a house in the middle of Great City. Now he have hesitated for 15 long years. He won't do so anymore. Now he don't have any regrets. Scene change. And we see a green forest, even though all the surrounding. If the restaurant are MC land, there was no place to build the dwarven village. Thankfully our boy have found a place to build it now. Beside him Rurin was eating an apple. She didn't like the idea of the dwarves sleeping in the lair's construction site. That's her space and MC space. Although MC is going to stay in the restaurant, still Rurin have problem because the lair is really spacious. Rurin asked MC if she can live in the lair after the construction is done. She got happy. She become this happy that she get hang on. MC shoulder for MC. It's more convenient if it's spacious. He can even make a tunnel that leads to the restaurant too. Scene change. We see a delicious food and now the lair is currently 70% completed. The old man tell the dragon girl it won't be difficult to meet the deadline for next year. Hearing this Rurin get happy. Mac also praised the good work of the old man. He remind him that they have still not paid back their debts. He even gave them land to build the dwarven village. The number of Burinerics has also increased. But this is maybe because there are quite, if number of males now, it looks like MC have to upgrade the barn. Mick asked them if they need to increase the number of people managing the ranch. If yes, then they will have to do another interview. From little far from their restaurant, we see someone foot. They are two siblings who are called beggar siblings, and their name is Linte and Mate. Mate asked tell her brother that she can smell something tasty, and his brother can smell something tasty too. They come close to restaurant. He tell his name to them. And the reason that he come to his restaurant because he want to apply for workers for the ranch. They show the old flyers to them, but they threw those flyers away a while ago, and also asked them where they find it, because they were too old. They both become surprised. But they were just about to make a new advertisement for additional workers and tell them to sit, because he is going to make some food for them. Fry sliced wuka meat with butter in a pan. MC want to prepare something warm for them since it's cold outside. In other pan fry onion, minced garlic, and mushroom. Once it starts changing colors, add the tomato sauce, some spices, and deglazed beer with the meat and cook it together. The smell of the food is very good, and there is no need for MSG. This is natural. MSG. But then someone shout MC to add MSG MC tell, but it can't hurt to add some. And after letting it sit for a while, wuka stew is done. The beggar guy becomes shocked when he see meat. They don't have to worry about it and eat as much as they would like because MC have made a lot. Both beggar siblings get happy to hear this. They eat a lot because the food is so tasty they can't stop eating it. The meat is so tender and the broth is rich in flavor and he can feel the warmth spreading through his body with every bite he take. They finish all the food and it was warm. The beggar guy felt like this is the most delicious meal he have eaten in his entire life, and he Aslo thank our boy. The most important thing is they said they wanted to work in the ranch, and MC asked if there is a special reason they want to work there. He tell that he love animals so much. Also, he don't know about anything else, but he and his sister is very persistent and don't give up easily. Mick ask Miss Elena if they are speaking the truth or not. They are speaking the truth about their persistent. However, they are hiding an important fact. When beggar siblings hear this, they become very afraid and they try to hide their wrist. Mac tell them to show their wrist for a second. They open the cloth and we see shackles marks in their wrist. They both look very sad. Mick asks if they are criminals. Mata try to give an explanation, but her brother shout at her. The beggar guy apologized for wanting to hide the truth, but tell them to believe him when he say that he had no bad intention in doing so. And he Aslo understand that they asked Toy much of them to employ them. Now both of them leave the restaurant. His sister try to stop him because they seems nice people also tell him to at least clear the misunderstanding. Her brother explain whatever the situation is. A crime is a crime, no matter what. Also, he don't want to make up excuse for what happened back then. However, he don't regret his actions. His sister ask, do he also not regrets not finishing the food which make him laugh. Scene changes, and now it's night. The customer are returning back to their homes. Dragon Girl ask about the failed subordinate interview. Mac tell her they seem to have a story to tell, but there is nothing MC can do if they don't explain themselves. She should also think about how it could put Miltine and Mr. Ment in a tight spot. Indeed, it's hard to find subordinate for them, so he gave to make new flyers now. But now they ran out of spices again. This is because they have a lot of customer recently. He place a coin in the table and start his magic. After completing the magic, he feels like he is dizzy. Summoning is the only spell which make Missy this exhaust. MC tell her to not even mention it. It would have been impossible for Missy to do this spell had he not eaten the Lord Heart. Now MC is feeling a bit different than usual. He can't gather mana anymore. Dragon Girl, get worry about him. In a second panel, he fall to the ground if he knew that this would happen. He wouldn't followed him that day. Dragon Girl starts crying and tell him to wake up. Mick opens his eyes and the first word he speak is Rurin, and she asks if he is alright. He is totally fine. So he don't have to worry. He just out of mana right now. Rurin becomes shocked to know that because he is class 9 mage. Mac will be fine after some rest, so he tell her to calm down. Dragon Girl wants to help him, so she asks about any help he can do to him. She become more angry because she want to help him today. Mick now tell her a thing to do. And in next scene we see her in kitchen making food when he says he want to eat something she cooked. What do we expect her to do? The scene change and it's cold night now, and below we see the beggar siblings. Even if they try to find some work, everyone in the city will reject them because they are ex-convicts. That's why they went to that restaurant in the suburbs. She asks how they will survive this winter because at least it was warm in the prison. Beggar guy can't suffer this any longer because they have been through so much now. He won't care about other people from now on. His sister also agree with her brother. To steal food from the Mirans, they have become real criminal and there is no stopping them now. They did go through the trash earlier, but that's the place where they have found the advertisement flyer. Alright, they will look for more food, deeper in the trash can. We see two men talking about the beggar siblings. He is asking if that Lint and Matt were released from prison today, and if yes, then they find them right now. The siblings see them and become angry. They recognize them as construction supervisor Ratanda. He didn't think he would still be looking for them. The fat man asked his neighbor man if Linte and Matt were released from prison today. If yes, then he ordered him to find them right now. Beggar siblings recognize this man as the construction supervisor, Ratanda. Beggar guy was too angry because Ratanda still doesn't know what he did wrong. His sister tried to hold him back. Because this time if they attack him, it may not end with just 2 years of prison. Scene change and we see 2 years back. Story, we see construction supervisor of Great City Ratanda. He is in front of a girl asking her if she will be okay if she kick him out while the construction is still in progress. She have to consider her husband because he works hard and doesn't even get a penny for his efforts. Suddenly, a man comes and open the door. He have some news for his Sir Ratanda. A support pole for compartment 3 have collapsed and some workers have sustained injuries. The beggar guy asks for emergency measures. When the woman hears compartment number 3, she rush towards it. Looks like she have someone to help. The fat guy Ratanda got mad from this news. The Bagger siblings adhered to the building plan closely, but a support pole suddenly collapsed. According to them, the construction materials were defective. Ratanda asked them what are they trying to say, while on the other hand some people come and caught the beggar guy. Ratanda kicks him because he thinks he have stole from the construction budget. Even after Ratanda took them orphan punks UN and gave him jobs, he fired them and the damages they gave caused will be accumulated as debts and deducted from their wages. Beggar girl becomes sad and say sorry to him to forgive them. But the evil Ratanda look at her with a creepy thought. He hold her chin and tell her he have a job that can pay him back. Suddenly, someone kicks someone. because he doesn't like the words of Rotunda. This is Beggar Man, who is fighting with the people who were with them. After fighting with Rotunda Mans, he comes close to Rotunda and punch him badly. Blood starts coming from his mouth and nose. Rotunda, after getting a single punch from the beggar guy, collapsed to the ground. The man can't figure out how this punk is so strong, while in the background his sister cheers him up because he was fighting so nice. Back to the original time, Beggar Girl tries to stop his brother because after that, he got hurt fighting with the prisoners for her sake. She don't want to see him hurt himself again. After hearing his sister HR stop for some time and think for some time, after thinking he make a right decision. For now they will avoid them before he finds them. Rotunda got too mad and say if they think it's all over after spending only 2 years in jail, then they have made a huge mistake. He order his mans to hurry up and bring them to him even if they have to beat someone up. Bring them to him. A man tell Rotunda that Duke Dedran was already transported to the capital. But Rotunda got too much angry. He doesn't even listen full conversation of the man. He slapped the man because they think he can't do something like this without someone watching him back. The man gave him a deadly stare. Rotunda call them useless fools because they really can't get anything done without Rotunda help. When Rotunda was going back, he see a girl which grab his attention. She was the elf doctor she was taking to herself. Rotunda rushed towards her because she could be the right person to ask. And also he order his mans to watch if there is anyone else around. Scene change. And we see our boy who is looking so tired because it can be the side effects of absorbing the ancient marble. He wasn't planning to absorb it in the first place, but it looks like the massive accumulation of mana from this world has finally been triggered. He need to stop the connection. Once he start absorbing it, it will remain that way, even if he stop halfway. For now he just need to wait for the night snack. He asked Rurin to prepare earlier. He got happy because he thinks Rurin must have prepared something tasty. She has also watched him cook for years, so she must know how to prepare basic snacks. Scene change again, and we see a very dirty kitchen where tomato and eggs were broken. This mess was created by none other than Rurin. She was crying because the dish she want to make wasn't supposed to look like this. She shouts, looking at her food because he can't eat this at all. If he eats, he will die. She is such a bad nurse. She thinks to calm the elf lady because with her elf tribes, mana transfer MC will get better. She don't like the fact that MC is going to be with elf, but she will bear with it for MC's sake. She don't know the location of her clinic, but she thinks maybe if she track her down with her body scent, then she can find her. But suddenly she got frustrated and kicked the chair because she doesn't smell like anything. Since things have come to this, she should just get a cook from another restaurant. But suddenly she thinks why she is looking for someone else. She remembers a flashback where Mick is telling her about healing magic. The body of a dragon. Itself surpasses the power of healing magic. She starts crying because she can't use healing magic as well as she can't even cook. Mech tell her she might have difference in races, ability, and personality, but she should not try to push everyone away because of that. She may be a dragon, but she can't survive in this world in her own. She got very demotivated and starts crying. She can't figure out why she can't do anything. Scene change. And we see Rotundamans are trying to catch the elf lady, just like he thought elves are quite beautiful. He gave been to her clinic a few times. He asked if she remember him. Rotunda tell he is looking for someone. As long as she answer him, you will send her on her way. If she can't answer, he personally look forward to that a lot more. He asked the question about the beggar siblings and if she knows where they are. The man thinks this perverted bastard, and how an elf who lives in the outskirts of the city know 2 people who just got out of prison. There is no way she would know. But surprisingly, she tell that she knows where they are. They both got shocked because how can she even know that? But suddenly she cast a magic and tell them. But she won't tell them. By attacking them, she escaped from them. Randa curse her with bad words and she will regret this when he will catch her. He come very close to elf lady and about to catch her. But suddenly a miracle happens. A punch hits the face of the fat man. He is the beggar guy. He say sorry to Mata. The punch was too deadly that Rotunda collapsed with just a single punch. The beggar guy can't hold it anymore. His sister also encourage him because it's fine and it's better this way. At least they will be able to spend the winter somewhere warm this time. Elf lady ask about their conditions if they are good or not. Beggar girl tell her to go because they have some unfinished business with those guys. Beggar guy is angry because now he is dragging innocent people into this. While the fat man was laying on ground, someone says he will help him and tell him to remember what happened 2 years ago. All people who were there got shocked to see the man. Fat man don't remember what happened 2 years ago, so he asked about it. We see the legs of the man who came here with lot of preparation. When the beggar siblings see the man, they gets very angry and start cursing him with bad words. This man is Roman Horde, who is Grake City gangster leader. Scene change. And we see Rurin knocking on someone's house door. The house is of Rain and her husband. She wake up when she hear the sound her husband ask who it could be at this late night. She wake up to cheek who this is. When she reaches the door, there is Rurin. She came here because this was the closest place with a familiar scent coming from. She asked them to tell her the location of the clinic. Scene change back there. The beggar man and his opponent were fighting. They both were beating each other equally. The beggar girl come with a stick to beat the man. But he stopped her attack easily, saying it's not a children play. Suddenly he grabs the neck of her. Ratanda become happy when he see beggar siblings are losing the fight. This man who is fighting is a veteran mercenary who has spent years and years fighting on a battlefield. The gangster asks Ratanda if he want them to beat them up more. So the fat man order him not to touch the sister because she can be useful in many ways, and also don't let the elf escape. When the gangster steps, the beggar guy hold his legs because he let the other go. Gangster become angry and kicks him in his stomach, which make the beggar guy more weak. Elf wants to help them, but the man don't allow him to go because it's his boss order. The beggar guy can't figure out what did he do so wrong to deserve something like this. Should he have to just ignore it back then, and closed his eyes and shut his ears? And thoughts like, what if he had escaped to another village and pretended that nothing has happened? If he had just ignored it, it can be resolved. He was thinking all these suddenly. Someone's voice grabs everyone's attention. They all look at her. She is Rurin. She knew that using her teleportation spell would be useless because the clinic was located in the forest. Rurin wants Elf Girl power. Elf Girl also wants to help Rurin. Right now, but she can't because she is not able to move by herself. When the gangster see Rurin, sweat start coming from his face. All his instincts are yelling at him because she is dangerous. He have no other way to survive unless he bow down to her right now. Gangster man order his mens to let the girl go. Ratanda can't figure out what is happening here. Ratanda tell everyone to catch them and ask them why are they just watching, not doing anything. When nobody hears him, he decides to catch the dragon girl himself and sell her off. But as we know, the dragon girl was so powerful that Ratanda got knocked in just a second. After that, she go near to Elena. She ask her to come with her. Scene change. And we see EFL lady helping our MC with her healing powers. Dragon girl. Get very happy to see her master fine again. Elf girl becomes so tired after this. Mech thanks elf lady because she helped him again, which means a lot to him. And this shit is enough for MC to manage everyday life. When elf girl here, it's just a relief. She become confused because she have poured in all of her mana and she thinks how much magic power Mk have. Rurin confirm if her name is Elena, right? So she tell yes, her name is Elena. Rurin thanks her because she helped her. Rurin become little shy saying this. Both MC and elf lady become very shocked because it's first time Rurin said thanks to someone. When they three were talking about this, the beggar girl was hearing behind the wall. Mech attention got into her. He is thinking, when those two going to come in? Then after they both enter the room, they want to say thank MC for saving them. MC got confused because he has heard that they are the one who have saved Elena from them. Beggar girl. Say Ratanda was after them in the first place. People unrelated got involved in it because of them. Miss he tell. It's not their fault. And let's not blame someone who was not at fault. Because that construction supervisor is quite famous for things like this. Mick ask why they didn't tell him that when they came to them. The reason because they didn't tell them before is looking back at it even now, he would have made the same choice. He didn't want to lie to him saying that he regretted his actions. Mick ask if they have a place to stay for the night. He gave a gold coin to them and tell them to take it and find a nearby inn. This coin will be enough for a couple of months. Beggar guy can't figure out why he gave this gold coin to them. He gave this coin to them because they will be working at the ranch starting tomorrow. The beggar girl become very happy hearing this good news. But they say they are criminals if he have any problem with that. But Missy tell that they have paid for their crimes, and he know the whole story. Now, he don't see any problem. They become very happy and bow their heads in happiness. They will do their best, and they will call him Big Brother from now. Now, the beggar siblings are introducing themselves again. They are Linta and Matt. They will be helping out with the duties in the ranch. They ask for help from Thier Sr. to work on the ranch because they are new and don't know many things. When the girl with short hair hear the word senior, she blushed little. But the other man who was working on the ranch mentioned he won't say much since it was manager L's choice to hire them, but he don't completely trust them. But he probably would have beaten Ratanda as well. He tell to come that way because he will show them how to manage hay first. Scene change. And we see McKee. He have recovered most of his magic, and with this rate, there won't be any adverse effects when he use mana. He starts thinking about something. Suddenly he noticed that Rurin was peeking at someone from the door, so he asked what he is doing. She replied, she is just watching the customer. She realized that there are so many things she don't know. Our boy got surprised because Rurin is interested in other beings. She even thanked Elena last time. He wondered if something wrong with her. We see a lady customer who is wearing something pretty shiny in her ears. Rurin wonders why those human women seem to be wearing shiny things, And why is that MC tell her that? Is because that is pretty. Even dragon lairs are filled with treasure. After all, Rurin don't know too much about that. Her mom lair was not like that. MC asked her if she would like to give it, receive something like that. She really don't get it. Rurin sees someone else wearing shiny things now. We see the little prince come. He was so happy for some reason. He also gave a good news. The good news is that this morning Ratanda was arrested from the hospital because he have committed so much crimes, like tax evasion, harassing women assault, and many more. He will probably never seen the light of day for the rest of his life. He is even worse person. MC have thought Price also tell one of his trusted people have in and provided information. He said that the one behind Ratanda was Dedrin. Even though Count Dedrin was dragged away, Ratanda didn't consider his diminished position and continued his actions. It's shocking that the Count henchmen aren't just in the castle alone, no matter how much Prince find his henchmen. He discover more in another place. M encourage him by saying he have tried his best. Mick ask if he have time in the evening in 3 days. Prince can definitely make time as long as he want him to visit. He come close to the prince and say something in his ears. After listening, Prince become happy and says he will sure attend. We see 3 days later time where a old man was sitting. He is Sir Ellison and he came right on time. He was about to say something, but MC stopped him and say before that hand over the items to him. Old man tell MC that he made it. When Ems look at it, it was perfect for him. He put in a lot. Scene change, and we see someone saying them to come. And at the food, we see many cold drink and food on the table. When they see this tasty food, they all get excited and happy. Mick will be happy if they could all participate, but the old man deny him because construction will be coming to an end soon, so he can't join him. We see a beautiful scene of the village. It's a night view. We see mountain and houses. It looks beautiful. After we see Rain and her husband, they are surprised because this is the first time MC have been invited to something like this. In ranch, we see beggar siblings asking if they can join the party too. MC have said that all of the ranch workers can come. So yes, they are invited too. Scene change, and we see a dish covered with a plate. Rurin is surprised because she don't know what all these things are. MC becomes surprised to hear this, and he asks if she really don't know what today is. Mecca is grateful to see all gathered here. There were the elf lady, the prince, the beggar siblings, and Mrs. Nolan Rain, and many more people. Misk have prepared a small event for all of them who have loved his restaurant. All this while, now Rurin understand. That is a restaurant event. She understand it little late anyway. This event is called What Do I Have in My Mouth quiz. The rules are simple. All then need to do us wear a blindfold and guess the food that they are served. Everyone who guessed right will receive a huge gift. Mick choose Miltine as his first participant. She become little nervous when she hear her name. She ask he won't give her something that isn't food. So MC replied, yes, he will give something which is a food. There is no cheating from our boy side. Although it might be different based on the situation. Now she have opened her mouth to eat the food and the food is going in. What's the manager said? Keeps bothering her. She ate the food and it feels like warm and mushy. She don't recognize the food. Name looks like she have not eaten this before. Suddenly, it feels like there is something squirmy inside. It's a wrong answer, and now Miltine have disqualified because she have given wrong answer. The thing which Miltine have eaten is called marshmallow. She don't even know what this food is. So MC tell her they are sweet made with sugar. He explains that this food doesn't exist in this world. It came from a very faraway land. Miltine asks if this is food which is not from this world. So how she's supposed to guess it? She wouldn't be able to guess it even if she ate it all. She was scared because her eyes were closed that she couldn't taste the sweetness. Now, it's turn of the next person to taste the food, and the next person is none other than Mr. Knoll. He is so confident, and he tell MC, give them all to him. His wife Rain, tell him to make sure to get it right. In next panel, we see fires coming from his mouth, and unfortunately, he has been disqualified. Rain get angry, because the food was not even that spicy, but for Knoll, it was spicy, and he can't eat spicy food. Now the thing are starting to get really interesting. According to our boy, he wonder if one of them will be able to get it right. Now the next person is Rurin. When she hear her name, she wonder if she is participating in the quiz too. Of course she is participating, but with no magic. He blindfold her. Mac tell her, this is a game where she have to guess it. Right. He take a spoon and feed her with it. She wonder what does he take her for because of course she will get it right using her dragon scenes. The food has a soft texture. This seems like bread, and she can taste the whipped cream that they had at the dessert banquet recently. There are layers within the bread, and it is very sweet. And something she taste. Something like fruit. She know what it is. She guess it and tell that it's a cake. All of them become so happy and cheers her because it's a right answer. She is right. But to be exact, it's a birthday cake. Mick wish Rurin happy birthday, which shock her. They all wishes her happy birthday. They all were so happy and excited. Now Rurin understand that it's her birthday now. Mick thought she would realize it's her birthday when he told her we were having an event, but she never realized. She become little shy because they all gathered here for her. She says thanks to them. When MC hear the word, thanks, he got surprised because Rurin said, thanks you again. Rurin shout telling she is not going to say thank them. Maybe there are just too many people for her to do that. Since she got the answer right, MC should give her a gift. According to the rules, the dwarves tried their best to make this for her. This gift is a jewelry for her. Rurin asked MC, when did he find time to prepare this for her? There is no way NC would forget Rurin's birthday. He is now putting the jewelry to her ears, and he tell her that this is going to sting a bit. He took a mirror and showed the jewelry to Rurin. Rurin is quite surprised and impressed by looking at her jewelry. Reen and Elf Lady also become impressed. It's look pretty decent according to Dragon Girl. She get it now. Why MC have bought it to her? She remembers a past moment where Venen is giving a necklace to Miel. Rurin become happy because it's pretty. She thinks she understands how that feels like now. Now it's enough with the wishes, they have to move on to the next person, and the person is Rain. She ate the food, and it's kinda crunchy. In second panel, she split the whole food. She thinks it a bug. The thing Rain ate was just a fried shrimp. She got so angry she beat her husband because of this. Now next is Linty. He also can't tell it. He got disqualified and the right answer was grilled. Wooba meat. Dragon Girl got angry on Linte. After this game, they all enjoyed the party. They eaten cake and many more dishes. The plate are empty now. Look like they have enjoyed the food very much. Not a single thing is left. This is the first time Rurin have had people gather for her birthday. This is her last birthday before the coming of age ceremony. MC ask if she is fine with this. She smiles and tells she is totally fine, and she also have a lot of fun. Meek looks outside and find it snowing. He asked Dragon Girl to go outside and watch Rurin become very excited to see the snow. The winter came so quickly, time sure goes by fast. They bring a table and chair and enjoy the night by drinking some hot coffee. Rurin ask, it's been only a year since MC came here. Mac tell 1 year might be short for dragons but not to humans. Shouldn't it be different for her since she ate the Lord's heart? No one knows if it has life-extending effects since he is the first one to have consumed it beside. He didn't eat all of the Lord's heart. They look at a shooting star. MC tell her to make a wish since it's her birthday. Rurin have already made a wish, and the wish is to be with Mick for longer. Meek can wish for the same thing too. Rurin won't tell Meek should make his own wish on his birthday. Scene change. And we see a place where we see flying, building a big palace, and a lot of dragon flying around the palace. This place is called the Black Dragon Palace. We see someone foot. He shout, "Uncle, it's look like he is finding his uncle." This boy with long hair asks his uncle how long he is going to let that arrogant human be is a promise to a mere human that important this man is a black dragon and his name is Nisa. We see another man. He look little worry about something. He is also a black dragon and his name is Dehegma. His uncle tell him this is because of Rurin. Niece bullied her not so long ago, but now that she is grown, he thinks it's a shame to let her go. Nies answer. This is not just about his personal interest, it is also related to the existence of the entire black dragon race, female of their race. Especially young dragon who can birth children. Most of them died during the last war. There is no telling how long this short period of peace will last. They can't keep waiting on a promise. Dehegma asks what he is trying to say. Do he want him to force Rurin back here? Young black dragon eyes become blue. He tell if he allow it. The uncle dragon tell him to stay calm. He isn't someone he can handle on his own. It would be a good thing if he doesn't kill him. The young dragon got angry and wonder how a mere human can be that powerful. Beside breaking a promise made will only tarnish the honor of the dragon race. He cannot allow that Lord Metadana will not let him go through with such an unjustifiable act. The young dragon boy wonder if he is trying to say that it's all right, as long as it's justifiable. It's seen young dragon have an idea. Says Dehegma. Such a promise wasn't satisfactory to him anyway, but he tell if something goes wrong, he will pretend that they never had this conversation. Now they both are satisfied with each other. After all, they are savior and not usurpers. Scene change. And we see a place. This place is called Mount Miliarek North Pole. Rurin wonders if they are here to get something. So MC replied, they are here for mushroom. Rurin again. Wonder why they have only come all the way here for just mushroom. This is because they are not just regular mushroom. They are extremely rare. 1 hour boy. Heard about them at the restaurant. We see a flashback where 2 customers were talking about a rare mushroom, which is only found at the North Pole. There was a nomad steering some woobas. But suddenly, one of the woobas started crazily digging a hole in the ground. The wooba found a mushroom that's only seen once in a lifetime. The nomad presented it to the palace and was given a huge amount of gold coins. The customer tell he wouldn't have any more worries if he could get his hands on such a huge amount. Now back to the real-time Messi is thinking a mushroom found by a pig digging and about a hole in the ground, and it's one that is so rare that it has never been seen before. It must be. He found out that it's truffle. It's definitely truffle. There must be a species that is similar to truffles in this world. Dragon Girl ask our boy how he is going to find it. So he tell the scent of the mushroom us a lot stronger than usual, but it's difficult to find since it grows so deep in the ground. But now MC have her Rurin. Have the senses, if a dragon after all. So he is going to use her again. Rurin ask about the smell of the mushroom ink, tell it smells similar like truffles. But after he got little confused. Now he have to summon truffle oil from modern times as well. And he wonder what if the truffle scent here is slightly different. Suddenly they hear a sound from somewhere. The sound is of some green monster. They have also weapons with them. And there was also a cat-like monster. She was big in size and white in color.